They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Although I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists. There is just so much to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question to I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what, there's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Happy Monday morning. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 10. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. We just hear in that little jingle, antidote to idiocy. So much idiocy to talk about today. So much going on in the world. I don't even know where to start, but there's a lot to come. Do stay tuned because it's going to be a rip-roaring show, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, on your watching on YouTube or on your connected device, all the different ways. It is great to have your company. Now, with you all the way until 1 o'clock. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about what's going on in LA. Donald Trump deployed the National Guard troops on Sunday after days of unrest and violence. Largely peaceful protests. That's what they're called when they're people on the left. Largely peaceful protests. Well, they were clearly riots. These are protesters opposing the crackdown on illegal immigration. So opposing people rounding up and detaining illegal migrants and deporting them, which is, by the way, mandated by the president after an election in which he said he was going to do that. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, one of the worst people on the planet, called the deployment illegal and immoral and accused the president of putting fuel on this fire. No, there would never have been any riots if it hadn't been for the National Guard. I think he might want to check his calendar. Plus, the Israeli military has detained activist Greta Thunberg after intercepting her, let's call it, aid boat as it sailed towards the Gaza Strip. They had about 2 kilograms of flour on board, for goodness sake. Drones surrounded the Madeleine yacht before IDF soldiers boarded the vessel just after 1 o'clock in the morning UK time. Greta claiming in a video that she had been kidnapped. Really? Really, Greta? Also, bosses should have the right to ban staff from wearing burkas and other face coverings in the workplace. Who said that? Tory leader Kemi Badenoch. It comes after debate on banning burkas was reignited last week when Reform's chairman Zia Youssef quit amid a row over the issue with new MP Sarah Pouchin before he dramatically rejoined the party 48 hours later. And the police service is broken. Forces are cutting officers because of funding cuts. That's what Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been warned by police representatives. And this comes as she prepares to set police budgets and all the other budgets in her spending review on Wednesday. By all accounts, the Home Secretary is the last Cabinet Minister to hold out on budgets. It's all performative. It's probably already been sent to the printers, ready for Wednesday's announcement. But we will talk about all of that and plenty more as well. I'm delighted to say, joining me for the chat today, as always on a Monday morning, is commentator Sam Armstrong. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, seriously, let's just get straight to it, because, you know, and I do want to talk about what has been all over our TV screens this morning, all over social media to wake up, is these riots in LA. Sorry, largely peaceful protests. It's a bunch of people who are objecting. A lot of them claiming, you know, Latino, but it's the usual suspects. It's the Antifa, it's the Green lot, the BLM lot, the Anti. It's the same suspects every time. They got away with it in 2020. These outrageous riots, taking down. I mean, whole neighbourhoods were burnt down, and the police did pretty much nothing. And this time they're objecting to ICE. This is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement body, officials who are going in to round up people. They're going into workplaces and rounding up illegal migrants. California has 2.6 million undocumented migrants, it's believed. It's a very strong economy, as Gavin Newsom, the governor, points out. Yeah, largely built on cheap slave wage, illegal economy. I'm sure he's very happy to be to the posh restaurants where the wash-uppers are paid, below minimum wage, and have no rights because they could be deported at any time. I mean, President Trump has ordered the National Guard in. Now, the big thing about this is, again, the BBC discussion is, it's the first time in 60 years that the US leaders deployed the National Guard. Just after Johnson did it to protect civil rights campaigners in the South. The state governor doesn't want them there. He says this is immoral, that this has basically created more unrest. But we saw the pictures before the National Guard went in. These were full-scale riots. That's when you send the National Guard in, right?
Well, let's be clear, they are every bit as much of a riotous attack on the democratically expressed laws of the United States, and we'll come back to the fact that these are laws, as anything that we saw on January the 6th, when we saw howls of outrage from exactly the same people now that are saying, oh, no, let's be careful, let's step gently around these dangerous, masked, violent individuals who are burning out cop cars, who are using explosives, who are committing grievous acts of bodily violence, including on police officers who have done nothing more than turn up to work that day. And this all comes back to a dangerous idea, and believe me, it's infected this country too, which is we don't enforce certain laws because we've decided that we just don't like them. We're not going to get rid of them. We're not going to say that people can break into this country illegally, despite the fact we don't know who they are. They could be murderers, paedophiles, rapists or whomever.
Terrorists,
But we're just going to instead say we're not going to enforce those laws. And enforcing those laws is in some way provocative. Is
racist.
In some way
it's probably racist.
Iffy, wrong. No, these ICE officers who went in to enforce the law. And I don't want to hear a jip, not a whiff of anything out of anybody that says, oh, I'm a rule of law, defend the rule of law. If you defend the rule of law, you defend the right of these officers to go into work, to do their job in difficult circumstances, to enforce the law. And the laws of the land say you can't break into the country illegally.
And there's a clear political mandate for Donald Trump. He was elected on this policy. This policy, by the way, has majority support, including from many Democrats as well. It's going to go over 60% support. So the load of Democrats are also supporting this. And again, even if they didn't, it's a simple matter is, well, then campaign to change the law and say, yes, our borders are open to anyone who wants to come in. And the idea, well, people have been working here for years. Yeah, but you came in illegally, you're undocumented, you don't have a right to stay. I feel the same way here. There are loads of people here who've come here illegally, or they've come here legally and overstayed their visas, and the estimates we've been given, maybe 1 million. It's not. It's going to be way bigger than that. It's going to be way bigger than that. Absolutely. People need to be rounded up and sent home. I don't care whether you've got family here. I'm not interested. You don't have a right to go and choose to live in any country you want to live in. And even if you've been law-abiding, now, you're not my top priority. I mean, I'd rather get the rapists and the terrorists and the paedophiles out first, and the drug dealers, But after that, no. And again, I don't care I don't care if you're a white American. I don't care if you're a black Nigerian. You're from Pakistan. You're from China. I don't care where you're from. If you don't have a right to be in this country, if you don't have a right to be in America, you need to be taken. I mean, you need to leave. You need, and if you don't leave voluntarily, you will be forcibly. That said, I do believe in, it's very important that you need to have due process, and people need to say, well, no, you've got me, I'm the wrong person, or you need to be able to need to get legal representation, but not like we have with our asylum seekers, 10 years of different appeals. There's a balance. But again, Gavin Newsom, one of the worst people on the planet. This is the man, he closed schools in California during lockdown for over a year. for a year. He kept kids in schools 8 hours a day wearing face masks until spring 2022. Spring 2022. By the way, he was busy breaking lockdown. There's video footage of him at some smart restaurant which opened secretly up in the Hollywood Hills for the very rich people to go and basically flout the lockdown laws. He is the worst kind of human being. He flip-flops on every single issue he can flip-flop on, depending on what is popular that week. And he's likely to be the Democratic front-runner at the next presidential election. And if he is, I can assure you it will be the Republican who wins.
Yeah, bring it on. And it's just the hypocrisy that gets you with these people
Always.
every single time.
Yeah, you either believe in law and order or you don't. It's very simple. I mean, I'm with it all the way. Here's a good idea. Even if you're a peaceful protester, if at these sort of events, when other people turn violent, you move away.
Quite.
You go away. When the police tell you to disperse, you disperse. That's how it works. That's not freedom of speech. That's a riot. Let's also talk about freedom of speech of idiots. You are entitled, and I believe very strongly in this world, particularly in this country, you're entitled to hold a stupid and ill-informed opinion as you want. You and I are both keen members of the Free Speech Union, and I include Greta Thunberg in that.
Yep.
And she should absolutely join the union because, my God, she does need some defence for her freedom of speech to say the dumb things that she has to say. She joined this so-called freedom flotilla, an aid convoy to Gaza, along with a lot of other virtue-signalling people, some of whom, of course, have openly supported Hamas. She was on this Gaza-bound aid boat. The aid boat I think I've got more flour and supplies in my kitchen cupboards than they were actually taking. Apparently, it was just sort of, a signal. It was a signal of their support. They were basically desperate to be boarded by the IDF so they could actually have a big show. And indeed, they did get boarded by the IDF early hours of this morning, and they have been taken ashore. But before that, Greta Thunberg recorded a video. Can you spot what's wrong with what she said in this self-gratifying video?
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
I mean, there's so much wrong with that, apart from the whole virtue signaling, the performative wearing of the keffiyeh and the like. She said she was kidnapped.
Yep.
Kidnapped. Does she know what being kidnapped really means? When the Israeli forces take you, they make a public announcement, they video it, they give you sandwiches and water. It's all on video. Then apparently they are going to get her and the others to watch that 45-minute video of the horrific obscenities of what happened in the 7th massacre. Largely, by the way, filmed by the Hamas terrorists carrying out those atrocities before they let them go and send them home. She also talked about my friends, family, comrades. Sweetheart, you're not in a war. You're just a propaganda tool. You're a useful idiot. I mean, you've been wrong about everything. The green obsession, the socialism. But on this, wrong even more. You weren't taking aid to people who are starving in Gaza. A, they're not starving, they're getting aid. B, you didn't actually have any real aid on board, because I've got more flour and supplies in my kitchen cabinets than you had on that little yacht. This was about you getting some selfies, going on a nice little jaunt, getting your numbers up on social media, and performative virtue signaling that does absolutely nothing for the people of Gaza, currently living under the rule of Hamas, does nothing for the Israeli hostages, the ones who really were kidnapped, sitting in tunnels after being tortured and starved by the people, the men that you support, the Hamas soldiers. Now, you've been taken to Israel and you are going to be shipped home. I'm sure Sweden don't want you back, but I think that's the wrong decision by the Israelis. I think they should have boarded the ship and taken you to Gaza, because I'm sure your comrades in Hamas would absolutely love an outspoken woman wearing shorts and spouting her views. I think they would absolutely love to have you there, and I'm sure you'd very much enjoy your experience too. Sam, this performative virtue signaling by celebrities is getting tiresome at best, isn't it?
And can I tell you what makes me sick? What makes me sick is that this woman, she's now
by the way, she is a woman. She's 23.
She's now a woman. is held up in our society by far too many of the media as a hero, as someone who's doing something that's brave and heroic all the damn time. Let me be very clear. She has lied about being kidnapped and she has filmed it. Let me tell you who is not portrayed as a hero by our media. It is the girls that went along to a music concert that celebrated peace in southern Israel, who were kidnapped, who were taken, raped, abused violently by hordes of baying men that shouted at them, cheered at them,
spat on them,
were taken to tunnels, were held underground where they were used as little more than slaves for 300, 400 days. Some of them are still there, and they were actually kidnapped. They felt the terror every night, hardly, one can only imagine, slept for an entire year or more. Not one of these people is going to get put on the front page of Time magazine. Not one of these people is going to get a book deal or an Instagram million plus followers. They are heroes. They are heroes. The fact that that woman is held up as a hero and they are not tells you everything that is going on with a sickness that has infected too much of our society.
It really has. It really has. I mean, I'm embarrassed for her and anyone supporting her. We're going to be talking to Ivonne Ridley a little bit later in the show. She said some absolutely outrageous, shocking things even in the last 24 hours regarding October the 7th. But we're going to be talking to her again because she was due to actually be on this flotilla and about what Greta Thunberg is doing there. Let's also talk just very briefly about what's coming back. Let's talk about stuff going on here. Got lots more on the show on what's going on here. We've got this outrageous migrant hotel bill. It's on the front page of The Sun today. And basically, our £4.7 billion annual bill to keep migrants in hotels and look after them takes every penny of tax from a total of 582,000 workers, and that is equivalent to the population of Manchester. This has been compiled by our good friend of the show, statistics expert Jamie Jenkins. He did the research. He used to be the ONS. He knows what he's doing with his numbers. Now, these figures aren't new, but this sum is so huge. And when we talk about, say, immigration, legal immigration, we talk about a city that used to be the city size of Birmingham a couple of years ago that would arrive net a year. Then it's the city size of Bristol, the latest figures. But this is about our taxes. So every person who goes to work in Manchester this year, every penny of tax they pay, that isn't going to the NHS. It's not going on schools. It's not building new roads. It's not paying, teachers or nurses or police officers' salaries. It is going to pay bills for hotels and food for illegal migrants. That really brings it home, doesn't it?
Yeah, and this doesn't even cover the cost of paying for their lawyers or for everything else that they get up to. And we know full well, and watching them and dealing with the fact that terrorists are coming across, known terrorists are coming across on these boats. But that's £90 million a week. If you live in one of those towns across this country that used to have a police station with officers that would come out and take and investigate if your house was burgled, and you had the reassurance of a police officer coming round your street and you knew that you were broadly safe, and if you've seen that police station disappear in the last few years, if you now have to live with the crime that at times accompanies these migrants but just infects our society more and more, if you have had to suffer the decline in your local town centre and you want to know why you're told that we can't possibly be able to afford something that this country was able to afford when we were fighting the Second World War or had rationing or everything else, this is the reason why. Because your taxes, rather than going to protect you, are going to pay the Hilton hotel bill of somebody that broke into this country illegally and endangers you and ours and everybody else's security.
Exactly. I mean, it is just extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, your thoughts welcome on this, but I also particularly want your thoughts on the debate that basically exploded after PMQs on Wednesday last week about banning the burqa. Sarah Pouchin, the new Reform MP, asked about this at PMQs, and we ran it live actually on the show. I think we're all a bit surprised. It was a bit sort of left field. It was then criticised by the Reform chief, chairman, as was Zia Youssef, himself a Muslim, but he said, look, this is a dumb question. His point being that, look, it's not even official Reform UK policy to ban the burqa or face coverings in public. Then went on to be this debate. He resigned. He then came back 48 hours later. Saturday night was announced he'd come back, but not as chairman, but in his other role, basically running the Doge side of things. I think it's a very good thing that Zia Youssef is back. It turns out he's had horrific amounts of abuse and again, just outrageous racist abuse that he's had to suffer. He is back in reform. I think that's a good thing for the party. But Kemi Badenoch, in an interview at the weekend, talking about the burqa, and she said the bosses should have the right to ban staff from wearing burqas and other face coverings in the workplace. She had out Sharia courts, first cousin marriage. She said these are insidious barriers to integration. Couldn't agree with her more. She said she had strong views about face coverings and would not allow people in her constituency surgeries if they wore face veils. Jack Straw, the former Labour Home Secretary, had the same rule in his Blackburn constituency. I cannot speak to you if I cannot see your face. I don't understand why this is even controversial. I would absolutely go along with, was it France and Belgium and other countries in Europe that have banned all face coverings, not the burqa, all face coverings. I don't want to sit on a bus or sit in a restaurant or certainly walk through an airport with someone wearing a balaclava. So I don't know why people would think the burqa was necessary, quite apart from the fact that it's got something, by the way, has nothing to do with Islam. It's not required in Islam at all. But that is clearly a way of dehumanising and de-individualising women, prevents integration and conversation. Why is it even controversial? Why shouldn't there be a ban?
Well, it is crazy that it is seen as radical, because in all of Europe, half the countries, and we're told Europe is this great progressive
liberal,
wonderland. Half the countries have banned it there. But I tell you who else has gone much, much, much harder at tackling radical Islam, and that's the Muslim world. Islamic countries in the Gulf, in Saudi Arabia, go much harder on tackling this dangerous,
some of the stands,
perverted
Africa.
idea, that this abuse of Islamic texts to propose this extremism. And they look at us and they laugh at us. They cannot imagine why we're not clamping down it, because they know how dangerous it is.
Absolutely. No, I mean, again, there are, I think, 10 countries in the Muslim, largely predominantly Muslim countries, where they have banned face coverings, banned the burqa and the niqab. I don't understand what is controversial about it. I'd love to hear from you on this, with Kemi Badenoch saying bosses should be free to ban burqas in the workplace. I'd go much further. I'd ban headscarves on girls through school. I would actually ban them in public buildings as well. And certainly, I think that, but the face covering, absolutely. But it would be all face coverings. You can't wear a balaclava. Take off your silly blue COVID mask, for goodness sake. We know they don't do anything. And the burqa and niqab as well. Would you agree with that? Would you do that? Do you think that would stir up tensions? We're always so worried about community tensions, aren't we? Tell us whether you agree with the ban on the burqa or not, and tell us why you do. Get in touch with us, 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. You can get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, or also on where we are with the LA riots, Greta Thunberg, the Migrant hotel bill, you name it, get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we are going to take your calls. I think there's going to be quite a big disagreement with Khalid in Leicester. Stay tuned for that. This is Talk.
So you can make this argument here that this is a form of evolution for the political party, that it's grown very quickly and perhaps has been caught out by that and needs to actually look at how the structure changes. And it's very interesting, this piece on the front page of the Sunday Times, that Farage has decided that USEF's old role is, quote, too big for one man, because there's a lot of responsibility there. And you can't have, from a management point of view, one person with so much responsibility. It's dangerous, because if they walk, as we saw 48 hours ago, it creates all kinds of problems.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for your company. 10:26 is the time. Sam Armstrong's still with me, and we're joined right now by Khalid in Leicester, who wants to talk about Greta's trip, well, attempting to go to Gaza. She's now in Israel after being intercepted by the Israeli forces. Khalid, I'm assuming from our previous conversations that you think that what Greta was doing was wonderful.
Well, put it this way, we can't forget what the reality is, what's happening on the ground. I mean, every day children are being killed. And I take you to a quote of one of the Israeli Knesset MPs. He stated, and I quote, the babies and children are the enemy, not Hamas. We will conquer Gaza, and when we have killed all the babies and children, we will have achieved our goal. And that is quoting a Knesset MP.
He's not the man leading the government and the policy. So you're saying that's the policy. Here's the thing. Israel has extraordinary forces. If Israel wanted to, kill everybody in the Gaza Strip, they'd probably been able to have done it by roughly October the 10th. Wouldn't they? But they haven't, weirdly. The population of Gaza has got bigger.
They could have nuked the place, no problem, right? But then they would have been nuked themselves, because not everybody's going to just stand by and watch a whole population. I mean, they've done it systematically. They say, we don't.
So are they killing? I mean, presumably you think that Israel's carrying out a genocide.
It's worse.
Because you don't know what it's worse than a genocide.
This has been carrying on since we know this for decades.
We know this,
Julia.
No. Do explain to me. How does a genocide work when the population gets bigger, not smaller? It's really complicated for me. I'm not very good on my maths, but...
But if you look at the history, you'll notice that they keep on changing the borders. They keep on pushing people into Gaza from different areas. So therefore they dissect it. Of course they are.
Khalid, would it be possible at any point, if you answer the question I asked you?
That's what I'm telling you.
So you're saying, so they're committing genocide, they are killing people, but then they just move other people in, and that's how they're hiding the genocide?
What do you mean they're hiding the genocide? Julia,
No, I'm just saying if the numbers are getting bigger, but Israel is apparently intent on killing an entire group of people, an entire race, an entire ethnicity in the Gaza Strip, how is the population still getting bigger?
Julia, families do increase. My own family's increased. Everybody's family's increased.
But I thought Israel was killing everybody.
Julia, just stop pushing Murdoch's agenda.
I don't push anyone's agenda. Khalid, that's incredibly insulting. I have my own views, and I wouldn't care two hoots, with all due respect to the man who ultimately pays my wages, what his views were. No one would tell me what I'm allowed to say. Ever.
But the point is, Julia, you will back Israel, no matter, even if they come and kill everybody in the whole of UK, you'd still back them.
Well, Israel wouldn't come and kill everyone in the whole of UK, would they? That's the difference between. Here's the key difference between Hamas and Israel. Hamas would do that. Israel wouldn't, which is one of the reasons why I support Israel's right to self-defence against murderous terrorists. I know I'm old-fashioned like that, but
Israel. Julia, it's the same thing anyway. But
can we talk about the conversation I wanted to have, which is Greta's trip to her freedom flotilla, taking aid to Gaza that had no aid and wasn't a flotilla. But apart from that,
people will do whatever it takes to. Sorry, people will.
Sorry, I missed that. So people will do whatever it takes to
whatever it takes within the law of the land. People will do whatever it takes to bring back the attention to the real core issue.
You're saying there hasn't been enough attention on what's happening in Gaza. It's on the front pages every day. It's on the leading news websites and on the news every day. Why do we need more attention on it?
That's not good enough. There's no consistency in the application. Of course, it's not. There's no consistency in application of law, Julia. On one side, we say yes, we should back Ukraine, but on the other side, we're saying no. We'll allow the mass killing of innocents on a daily basis.
We're not seeing a mass killing of innocents on a daily basis. How many people have died in Gaza?
Well, according to reports, anything between 60 and 100,000.
Oh, bless you. Even the Hamas-run health ministry isn't claiming that figure. You're just making that figure up.
So the Labour...
Sorry, bloke on Twitter says... I'd rather... No, the figure's around the 50,000 mark. But Hamas, in their own documents, have said that at least, and this was a year ago, 17,000 Hamas fighters have died. We know a huge number have died in recent months. So we're looking at... Oh, and also figures include 7,000 people who had natural deaths. So we're looking at a roughly half, even on the Hamas-run health ministry's own figures, half of the people who've died are Hamas fighters, legitimate targets. The other half, tragically, are civilians who are being used as human shields by Hamas, are not allowed into the tunnels where they could be kept safe by Hamas, by the way.
Stop the Israeli propaganda.
Which bit of that was... No, which bit of that was propaganda?
Everything's... Whatever they say...
No, I'm not talking about what Hamas... No, I'm not talking about what Israel said. Hamas's own figure... On Hamas's own figures. Those are Hamas's figures, not Israel's.
Oh, sorry, 1 second, just one second. Yeah, sorry, are you there, Julia?
I was there the whole time.
Yeah, the thing is, Julia, look, sorry, multitasking. Sorry, yeah, what I'm saying, look, Julia, the thing is, you say Hamas run, Hamas this, so we can say...
No, I don't say Hamas this, no. I've given you Hamas's own figures.
Yeah, but whatever the figures, everybody can see everything's straight in black and white, Julia. Even no matter what you say, even in previous wars, when I say wars, I mean the massacres that taken place previously. Were 40. Of course, they've been massacred. You stop saying, stop backing Israel when it has no right, when you have no legal.
Khalid, if you're not actually going to engage in any facts, it's a waste of time having this conversation. I'm giving you Hamas's own figures. I want to talk about Greta. Did Greta achieve anything?
You want to talk about Greta? Well,
that's what the question was about.
Greta or anybody will do whatever... I've told you already, whatever it takes to bring back the attention to the real core issue. I mean, the thing is, you know that Palestine has been brutalised for decades. And if they want to go back to the status quo, say, OK, Hamas lay down their weapons, give the hostages back, everything's back to normal, everything... Of course they can't. Back to normal, what is normality? Why did this come about?
Well, they could stop firing rockets at Israel, couldn't they? Stop starting wars with Israel, which they keep losing. Just finally... in her video, Greta said before she was arrested, if you see this, we have been kidnapped by the Israeli forces. Was it acceptable for her to use the word kidnapped, given that there are still dozens of Israeli hostages being held captive, literally kidnapped in the tunnels of Gaza?
So you're saying that the thousands of Palestinians that have been plucked from their homes, plucked from the Gaza, taken into prisons, and
ones arrested,
lying there indefinitely, right?
The ones arrested.
Arrested.
They're not kidnapped. They're arrested.
They have been plucked.
Randomly chosen. Khalid, I would love to come and look at your social media. I really think you need to expand your horizon. I don't know. Maybe he's just been listening to the BBC. I don't know. Tarquin, I'm saying, Khalid, thank you very much. Tarquin is on the line as well. Tarquin, I'm going to have to speak to you a little bit later because we've got to get to a break and we're going to have to get to our next guest. Tarquin, do please stay on the line. I know he wants to talk about Burka ban. Up next, going to talk to Lord Mackinlay, Conservative peer, who's been right on pretty much everything so far. I wonder what he thinks about all the stories going on back at home. We'll talk to him up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong still with me. Also, Lord Craig Mackinlay, Conservative peer, former MP, joins us right now to talk about, well, all things going on here in Britain. A very, very good morning to you, Craig.
Good morning, Julia. Good to be on.
Thank you so much for joining us. I must talk to you just really briefly. I want to ask you about Greta Thunberg and this so-called freedom flotilla, an aid ship which basically apparently had a loaf of bread in and one bag of flour in to go to Gaza. They've been intercepted. She said she's been, quote, kidnapped. Well, what do you make of these sorts of? I mean, they're stunts, really, aren't they?
Well, completely. I mean, she's been the master of stunts. I don't know who sort of controls her and pays for these stunts that she does. I mean, she started life as this, well, I was thought, slightly peculiar young girl picking up the mantle of net zero and all the rest of it. She seems to have given up that ball. I don't know why. I think she realises the rest of the world are no longer listening, and it's all been somewhat of a disaster. So she's now on the Palestine freedom fighter wagon, as it were. I mean, this boat that she's on, it couldn't have come cheap. I wonder who's paying for it. But I'm not surprised the Israeli authorities said, no, I don't think we want you anywhere near here because you're not a force for good. What is the shame of it is because she perhaps could be a force for good in some things, but she seems to tie her wagon to everything that's anti-West, anti-normality, anti-everything that we hold dear.
And that is absolutely, and that is so many of these people. And again, you get into this.
I'd say to Greta, please go home and get an education.
I mean, she really does
need.
Need.
Be a lovely young girl.
She does really. Well, no, gosh, she's a young woman, 23 years old. She needs to go back. Certainly needs to finish school. That's for sure. Let's talk about what's going on here because I mean, it's very interesting watching what's going on in LA and the National Guard being sent in because these obviously largely peaceful protests that are clearly full-scale riots. But it's amazing, I think, that we haven't seen, I'm not encouraging it, let's be very clear, haven't seen more anger on the other side of things here, because there we've got people saying, no, don't deport the illegal migrants. Here we're going, please, for the love of God, deport the illegal migrants. But £4.7 billion annual bill, front page of The Sun today, to keep migrants in hotels and look after them. This is equivalent to tax from 582,000 workers. That, according to Jamie Jenkins, who's a statistics expert, big friend of the show, is equivalent to the population of Manchester, going out to work today, paying their tax all year, and it's all going on this migrant bill. It's unsustainable, isn't it?
Well, it's completely. It's a multitude of failures. We've got a failure by Frontex, the external barrier of the EU. That's obviously not working. We've got so many leaky parts to that, letting people into the EU. I do note that Italy is trying to be more robust with this, and Meloni has got a lot of good things about her that I wish we would rather take on board here in the UK. But that's the first point of failure. The second point of failure is obviously the 480 million over 3 years that we paid the French authorities to actually say, please, can you just stop people launching off the beaches? All we want is a few gendarmes armed with a few knives so that they can actually just stab the boat so they can't be launched.
No, I don't understand. This is so basic, isn't it?
Well, I mean, we're not talking about a huge length of seaside. It's always going to be along the narrowest stretch between here and there, probably about 10, 15, 20 miles at most. Yeah. I cannot believe with drones and technology and infrared cameras and all the rest of it that this is too hard an undertaking. But it seems that they merely sort of watch many go across the channel, and the percentage they're stopping has actually reduced this year than compared to last year. So that's the second point of failure. The third point of failure is the desirability of Britain. And I've never quite understood that.
What with the weather and all?
Well, exactly.
I'd be in the south of France. Why are they here?
Well, I would say if I was a sort of self-respecting refugee-seeking migrant, I'd be off to the south of Spain or somewhere. I wouldn't be coming to Britain. But no, I know why they're coming. It's because you see the state of facilities offered to refugees in France, not very good. Yeah. And you see the state of what they're given in the UK, i.e. very good, 4-star hotel for a year or more, 3 meals a day, free mobile phone and clothes and all the rest of it. What's not to like for a mere 3,000 or 4,000 euros to pay a people smuggler? You've also got the opportunity of working in the underground economy far more easily in the UK. No prizes for guessing some of these delivery companies. Yeah. I wonder how many questions are really being asked. And I've got a friend who lives nearby one of these migrant hotels, and lo and behold, there are a lot of these very branded delivery bikes parked outside the refugee hotel.
Yeah, we're basically funding it all. Exactly, and they know perfectly well, because that's something.
So that's another problem. But just taking this to the nth degree, we're well on the way of having a record year, sadly. And if we do get a bumper year of weather, it will get even worse over this summer. So where does this end up? We're going to run out of hotels, but. You quote those figures, 4.7 billion. That is a mere sleight of hand, Julia, because what we're doing uniquely in this UK is we're actually allowing more to be converted from refugee claimant to legitimate refugee seeker with the rights of accommodation and all the rest of it.
And people who've been rejected in Germany and France and Sweden, and they come over here and they get accepted.
Our rate of rejection is far, far lower than the rest of the EU. So again, that's another pull factor. And it is a con on the figures because they're no longer a cost of refugee accommodation.
But we're still paying for them.
They become...
Unless they're all entrepreneurs and rocket scientists and brain surgeons, like we're constantly told they are. We've got the spending review coming up on Wednesday. Big issues there in terms of, I mean, look, there ain't no money. We're now borrowing far more than we've ever done. By the way, way more, and our interest costs way more than they were under Liz Truss, and that forced her out of office. A lot of pressure on Rachel Reeves. Just briefly, do you feel sorry for her at all?
Well, she has created a lot of what she's reaping now. I mean, we're having unemployment is now rising. The entrepreneurial spirit in the UK is being snuffed out. And our brightest and best are going, well, what's the point after university staying here? I think I might as well go and ply my wares in somewhere like Dubai. So that is a nature of what she has sown. But her room for manoeuvre is getting very narrow. Really interesting figures I saw from Fraser Nelson just yesterday about the embedded number of workless households has, lo and behold, doubled again since COVID days, and it is stubbornly high. We've got people who are on long-term benefits, whether that is PIP and disability or just not looking for work, is again at a massive high. Yeah. Now, if we can get the DWP figure right, that would go a very long way of fixing Britain in so many ways.
Absolutely.
We'd be spending less.
Absolutely.
People at work.
Now,
they would be having probably less cases of mental health problems, and you will be liberating many, many billions for the pressures that we have.
You cannot deal with any of the problems we've got in this country without tackling that welfare reliance. I'm going to ask you a question. I need one sentence. You'll have one sentence. I'm not going to say what, but one sentence response. Would you ban the burqa and other face coverings in this country?
No, I wouldn't. You might be surprised to hear that.
OK, very interesting. Well, I'm sure we'll talk with you about that on another day, but I so appreciate you joining us. Lord Mackinlay, Conservative peer there. Sam Armstrong, come back in on any of those topics?
He's always been a bit of a libertarian as well, Craig. I do love him, but he has always been...
You can't be libertarian on certain issues, which actually...
But I do think he raises a really interesting point about the kinds of immigration and emigration we've got. I know so many young, talented people that are flying abroad to the States and elsewhere.
I'm so worried about this.
And who are we replacing them with? We are sending out the brightest and best, and we're replacing them with the dregs of the world, frankly, those that are breaking into this country illegally. That is the opposite. Literally the migration system that you would fight tooth and nail to avoid, and that's what we've got in this country.
We really do. I'm really worried. I'm genuinely worried about the young people. Like my daughter and her friends are going to go, yeah, you know what, I'm going to make my future somewhere else. I want to get to that call I didn't get to before we went to Lord Mackinlay. Tarquin is on the line in London, and Tarquin, you wanted to talk about this possibility of a burqa ban. It's been raised by a Reform MP, Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, said bosses should be free to ban burqas in the workplace, and she says in her constituency surgery she refused to speak to someone if they won't move a face covering. Would you support a ban on face coverings?
Absolutely, Julia. Great show, by the way. I wouldn't call it a ban, though. I'd just call it a rule or a guideline, because at the end of the day...
It's either a ban or it's not.
Well, no, but the point I'm making is this. Can you imagine if you went to get a new passport and you go in wearing one of those across your back? Well, it's my cultural right to wear it. They'd say, well, get it off,
You're on a passport photo now. This is what we have. This is the same thing as Jack Straw said years ago. Yeah. You're dealing with a human being. If this is a cultural decoration that isn't enforced by Islam, then it's just discretionary. It needs to be removed. And the other thing, well, the main point of phoning Julia I was incensed by was the way in which Starmer responded to the question in the House of Commons. And that was, he literally soiled himself in his Calvin Klein as supplied by Lord Ali underpants by thinking, there.
Wow. Tarquin is not a fan of Keir Starmer, I think we can safely say. Here's my thing, though. It's, the majority of Muslim women around the world, even in Muslim-majority countries, don't wear face coverings. Indeed. And in countries where they bring in, they are strictly enforced by male-run governments where women largely don't have the vote. Ta-da! Like, it's not a mystery, is it?
Inverse misogyny, isn't it?
Inverse, it's just misogyny, full stop. Tarquin, thank you very much. 10:47 is the time. I'm going to take a break. Then we're talking about policing here, as policing is broken. That's what top officers are warning Rachel Reeves, saying they need more money in the spending review on Wednesday. Otherwise, we won't get those extra officers and they won't be fighting crime. But, I mean, will we notice a difference? Love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Get in touch. We're going to be talking to Chris Phillips up next. This is Talk.
We think we do need to leave the ECHR in order to get back control of our borders, in order to make sure that it's the democratically elected British Parliament who decides who can stay here and who needs to leave, which we think should include every single foreign criminal and anyone who attempts to enter the country illegally. We think we need to leave in order to stop veterans, military veterans, being vexatiously pursued, and in order to allow us to decide what oil and gas drilling goes on. So in principle, yes, we need to leave. There are, however, legal details we need to work through.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. Let's get to Chris Phillips right now. He's a former Metropolitan Police DCI. He's also the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office to talk about, well, do we have enough money for policing? A very good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, another day, another dollar. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, complaining about not having enough money. The spending review is being announced by Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, on Wednesday. It's got to be sent to the publishers at some point. I'm going to guess, around now is the last minute for any debates and discussions. We understand Angela Rayner's won more for her housing bills, but we know that Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is still being in battles over police funding. But we've had some very senior police representatives basically saying, look, the heads of two bodies that represent ordinary officers and superintendents, saying police morale has been crushed and saying the police service is broken and it's funding cuts that are the problem. Are they over-egging the pudding, or is it a genuine issue?
No, it is very much a genuine issue, and it's not just this year, actually. It's over the last 15 years where gradually, well, initially very much so, large amounts of money were taken out of the police budget. And then every year since has been reductions. This at a time when policing is becoming far more expensive. And the net result of that, Julia, is we don't see police officers patrolling our streets anymore. And if we want police officers to keep us safe, and let's be quite honest, we cannot run a society without having law and order working properly. Yep. Then you need to pay for it.
I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people would feel, whenever we discuss, the police say we need more money for this, or we're going to not be able to investigate crimes. You'll think, you're not investigating most of the crimes that happen anyway. So are we going to notice the difference? Well, but is that a lack of funding? I know the Home Office got hit. It was particularly badly hit in the austerity years under Cameron and Osborne. I know that. But, I mean, is it uniquely badly hit that they really can't do their job?
Yeah, I do believe it is. And if you just look at the pay scales for police officers now, I mean, you would not ever recommend anyone joining the police.
But I feel the same way about journalism. Honestly, the wages for one of my first jobs, the wages that people had a couple of years ago was the same as I had when I was 25, and I ain't close to 25 anymore. I mean, the exact same amount of money. So, I mean, that's a lot of careers, isn't it?
It is a lot of careers, and you're quite right. I think particularly in the public sector, it's struggled a bit, but right across the board. But policing is a very difficult thing to do. People generally, certainly in my time, and for many hundreds or 100 years, were signing up for long-term careers. Yeah. Now they're not. They're leaving because they just know that they're not being supported. They're not earning enough money. They can earn twice as much money very easily just going and driving a train. Yeah. And they're just not staying as police officers. And you lose experience, Julia. Yeah. You lose the ability to police the street. And of course, that just the morale within.
I know I've mentioned this on the show before. A friend of mine who had his 50th birthday party, and virtually everyone there was a copper, and all of them were counted. They could all tell you years, months, weeks, and days down to the day of their retirement when they could collect their pension. They were all just absolutely just bring it on. We are so miserable. It's no longer the job that we signed up to do. The thing is, the job they signed up to do is the job the public want them to do. It's just the bosses and the politicians don't seem to want them to do.
And to be honest, the noisy public, the portions of the noisy public that have made policing almost impossible. As soon as you try and deal with the youth now, in the old days, if you like, you could deal with them, you could bring them in, you could arrest them, you could speak to their parents. Now you suddenly got 5 cameras thrown in your face, and you've got groups of other kids hanging around trying to disrupt what you're trying to achieve.
I have to say, I don't mind everyone. I think it's in everyone's interest that a lot of this stuff is filmed and body cam footage and people video. I think that's a really good thing. But again, we need to make reasonable judgments. And again, if a few scroats are afraid of the police, I'm willing to live with that. What did you make, by the way, especially having as a former boss of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, you know who are terrorist threats, and as much as the politicians on the left don't seem to like it, it's largely an Islamist threat in this country. Every mass murder event Islamist rather than anything else. But concern about mass migration, concern even about the fact that the British culture is kind of under attack and is disappearing. That alone could be something that could be considered a terrorist ideology that requires intervention to de-radicalise people. Who is saying this? The government's own anti-radicalisation programme. The official documents for an online training course on the government's website list cultural nationalism as a belief that could lead to someone being referred to the de-radicalisation scheme. I'm pretty sure every single person who works at Talk, every single person who listens and watches Talk, an awful lot of our guests, half of the front bench of pretty much every political party, we could all be referred to Prevent on that basis, couldn't we?
Well, I think it's a signpost, but so is supporting England in football. You know, if you want England to win the World Cup, then you could be considered one of the terrorists.
Don't wave that flag. Don't wave that flag.
No, exactly. So it's absolutely bonkers, and we all know that. And this is where our government, people that are making the rules are so far away from the man in the street, woman in the street, and they just don't seem to know and don't get why people are so upset. And if you live in, the sunny Beaconsfield or, around the outside of London, if you live in those places, you're not affected by immigration that much. You quite like the fact that, you've got people delivering stuff to your door. But if you live in the council estates, in the centres of our cities, you are being devastated by mass immigration. And it's simple. We need to be speaking for those people. I think you do, Julia. Speak for those people that are actually suffering from this issue.
Yeah, I've been talking about this stuff since before 2000. I've had all the names. I've had all the names called to me. Water off a duck's back now, but really looking forward to being de-radicalised and re-educated. That would be great.
Me too.
It'll be fun. It was when it will be a really fun day out. Chris Phillips, always so good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Cam Armstrong, we definitely need to de-radicalise you. You believe in this sort of freedom of speech thing and everything. That's dangerous ideology in these days.
But I mean, on the one hand, Julia, this is a joke. On the other hand, it's really not a joke.
It's terrifying.
And I'll tell you for why. Because while counter-extremism professionals, of which there is a finite number, were dealing with this kind of nonsense, we're dealing with the referrals from a woke teacher over their kid that was watching Nigel Farage videos at the back of the classroom. Who were they not dealing with? They were not dealing with the man that murdered David Amos. They were not dealing with Axel Ruder-Cabana.
Yeah.
They were not dealing with terrorist after terrorist after terrorist who was, quote-unquote, known to authorities. You can read, referred to
every single one of mass casualties. We've known
they
them.
don't bother dealing with these people. They're too busy trying to police the views of millions of the British public. And as a result, people are dying. When you've got finite resources, when you're dealing with something as serious as terrorism, it matters that you focus on the people that pose a genuine danger to this country. They aren't. It's a disgrace.
And again, I would say one of the really big signs that someone has been radicalised is, for instance, wearing the burqa. It is not required under any Muslim teaching. And actually, it's basically a sign of political ideology, Islamist political ideology, rather than anything else. If we're looking at people who are radicalised, I would go there first. It is an extraordinary thing that people, the majority view of people in this country, people who want to protect their country's culture and the country's borders, that somehow that makes you a terrorist. But this is what the authorities think of us. They despise us. They think we're terrible, awful people. They don't believe in any of the things that we believe in. And yet they're the people in charge. Kind of seems to me that that's the thing we need to deal with. So much more to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. So many top guests coming. Do not miss a thing.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
8722, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
although I get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so much to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what, there's no.
I think David Lamb even would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I told you an hour ago, didn't I? We had a rip-roaring show. We absolutely did. So many more top guests coming in this hour. We're going to be talking to Toby Young, the director of the Free Speech Union. We're also going to be talking to Benhabib a little later in the show. And we're going to be talking to Ivonne Ridley. Again, I've known this woman. We were old friends. I've known her, oh my goodness me, 25 years. Some of the things she has had to say about Gaza and Israel are absolutely shocking, not least in the last 24 hours. But she was supposed to be on that freedom flotilla with Greta Thunberg. We're going to talk to her about that coming up. We're also going to be talking more about what's been going on in Los Angeles. We're going to be talking about Hamid Choskan. He's the man who's convicted of burning the Quran and shouting Islam as religion of terrorism, a de facto blasphemy law. Well, he was told at the weekend that there was an imminent threat to him from a terror plot to murder him. Yeah, well, he's probably responsible. I'm surprised he hasn't been convicted of that, because apparently someone attacking him with a knife and kicking him, that was reason to convict him of a disorderly conduct. We're also going to be talking more about the fat jabs. I know, I'm obsessed with them. I am not taking them. If I try and lose weight, I do this weird thing of losing weight by, I don't know, eating less and exercising more. But England has become the fat jab nation. The NHS weight loss drug prescriptions have doubled to almost 3 million in just a year. I am paying for you fatzos to get a drug to lose weight when you could just eat less. Surely you could pay for your drug by saving on all the takeaways. Deep sighs, but 269 million quid in the last year. I'm sorry, but it beeps me off. We're going to talk about that, plenty more besides. Joining me, your face during that. I'm going to ask you about what you think about this. Sam Armstrong is a commentator, joins us every Monday morning. Never a man who is shy of giving his opinion. Before I do that, I must remind you, I'm going to get to our DAZN competition read. Do not forget to join that competition. But also remember to go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. It does exactly what it says on the tin, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can't not find it on YouTube. Hit subscribe so you never miss a thing. So if you miss any of the show, that's where you'll find me and people like Sam Armstrong giving his tuppence worth. Good morning once again.
Good morning.
Gosh, so much. I always have a list of stuff I want to talk to my guests in the studio about. We rarely get through more than half because we all, let's face it, we all love a yap and we all have 20 different opinions on everything. But can we start with Greta Thunberg this time? Because she's so wrong about everything. So Greta Thunberg decides to get on this freedom flotilla. As far as I can tell, there was only one boat. It's a sailboat. All the videos, not a single one showing the actual sails up. The engine is completely... It's a diesel engine, by the way. It's a diesel engine. Yeah. They're apparently taking aid to Gaza, except they've apparently got about like 2 bags of flour. Yeah. I mean, really, I mean, genuinely. I mean, I think they had 100 kilograms. That's not even a supermarket trolley full. I've got more stuff in my kitchen cupboards than she has. Yeah. But it was all about making a show, and the very, very important thing was that they were going to, show the aid. They want to break the embargo that's stopping people getting into Gaza with aid. In the early hours this morning, UK time, they were stopped by Israel. This is the video that Greta Thunberg put out ahead of being detained. This is what she had to say.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
Kidnapped. They were stopped. And there's a big dispute of whether or not Israel has the right to stop them. Of course they do. They're stopping people getting into Gaza. It's a war zone. Personally, I'd have let her and her mates get in. One of them is a big fan of Hamas anyway. He's been at Hamas leaders' funerals, for goodness sakes. Go in, wear your little shorts, have all your opinions, don't cover up. See how well that goes down with your Hamas comrades, little Greta. Is there anything she's not been wrong about, Sam?
Well, the first thing that she's wrong about is that she couldn't get the aid into Gaza, because actually what the Israelis have done is they've taken a Tesco Express shopping, and I think it frankly amounts to very much little more than that, and they're taking it in anyway. So they're not stopping aid. In fact, the Israelis are taking in aid every day into Gaza, which is more than could be said of the Egyptians, who we never hear a thing about, despite the fact that they share a land border with Gaza too. But
they want the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza too, obviously.
Well, mysteriously, the Egyptians, who obviously are another Islamic government, want absolutely nothing to do with the lunatics in Gaza. But we don't talk about them because we only focus on the Jews, because there was a memo went around, and only Jews matter when it comes to bad things. They don't matter, of course, when it comes to being raped, murdered or kidnapped.
No. Actually kidnapped, as opposed to pretend kidnapped like Greta.
But
also, by the way, if you kidnap Greta, you would give her back.
Indeed. Well, the pretense is offensive, though, Julie. It is offensive when you have actual, genuine kidnapped victims. The Israeli government are probably going to end up giving more aid over to Greta Thunberg. So the first thing they did was give her a sandwich when she arrived than they were ever going to deliver into Gaza. They're going to be taken, they're going to watch the video of what actually happened on October the 7th, the massacre of which the name must not be mentioned, and then she's going to be deported back. This entire thing at a time in which Israeli hostages are remain under capture, when the people of Gaza are suffering under the yoke of Hamas's brutal dictatorship, for her to come into that situation and, you know what, say, no, it's not about them, it's about me, is offensive, it's puerile, it's sickening, it's disgusting. I don't want to see this woman on television anymore. I don't want to see her in a newspaper.
She's got the right to talk about stuff and to be wrong about stuff.
But she has got no expertise on the climate, let alone a conflict thousands of miles away from where she lives.
Way too much school.
She knows nothing. She's got nothing interesting to say. She's wrong about everything. This woman does not deserve the platform that she's got.
I know. She's one of those people, it's like Meghan, that I kind of feel ashamed and a bit dirty when I talk about them. But later in the show, we're going to be talking to Ivonne Ridley, we were friends on the Sunday Express, and she was taken captive, genuinely taken hostage by the Taliban back in 2001, ahead of the Afghanistan war. I have to say, some of her views on this are absolutely shocking. She was supposed to be on that so-called flotilla. We'll get her thoughts on it. I also want to talk about Dawn French. Now, much loved. I've never found them that funny, Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders. By all accounts, everything that's written is by Jennifer Saunders rather than Dawn French. She always seemed like a nice enough lovey. She's a lovey, so I assumed her views, as you can with all these loveys on these issues. So of course she takes whatever, What does Gary Lineker think? I'm with him. Now, she put out a video on her social media. talking about what's been going on in the Middle East. I'm clearly not very knowledgeable. And she's been forced to apologise. See if you can work out why she had to apologise for this video. Have a watch and a listen.
Complicated. No, but nuanced. But, you know, bottom line is no. Yeah, but, you know, they did a bad thing to us. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, but no. But we want that land and we don't know, you know, got the history and we got, you know, no.
It's not the most cogent, intelligent argument. I'd love to put her up against Natasha Halsdorf, wouldn't you? Although maybe just, I don't know, she would just shout BS, as Piers Morgan did to Natasha Halsdorf in that video last week. They did a bad thing to us. She's referring to October the 7th, when 1,200 people were massacred and 250 people, including babies, were taken hostage. She's referring to a day when Hamas fighters gleefully filmed and put on social media raping and killing people. It is so flabbergasting. Now, she said, she didn't mean to mock it. She was trying to make a point. But again, they did a bad thing to us. As if the Israelis, the Jewish people, the people on that side of the debate are making a silly, trite argument, as opposed to our country was invaded. We had the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and we need to take action to self-defense. This is the level of debate that we're getting in this country. And again, it's always celebrities. I have no issue. And you're a footballer, a football pundit, you're a celebrity, you're an actor, a singer. You feel free to give your opinion on anything. I believe in freedom of speech. I want to know. When you're stupid and ill-informed, I'd really like to know about that. But seriously, read one book, read one neutral news article on any topic before you make an idiot of yourself on social media. She has apologised, but only if people were offended. And of course, it's mainly because she's going to lose a load of lucrative work for being such an idiot.
Yeah, and what a fake apology. I didn't mean to joke. I strayed into it. I did it accidentally. I accidentally joked about it. Look, this woman is qualified in nothing other than being a professional comedian.
Yep.
She is literally a professional in joking. She knew that she was making a joke. You knew that you were making a joke. You have earned a living out of making jokes for 30, 40 years. If you want to apologise, do you know what? Fair play. You didn't know very much. You were encouraged by all the celebrities. You made an idiotic comment.
Yeah.
Come out with an apology. But don't insult the intelligence of the British public by saying that you didn't mean to do it.
Yeah, that's
or you
the
did
thing.
it accidentally.
Yep.
That is a lie. Do not compound the offence that you have caused by lying to us all and expecting us to believe
it. Really is extraordinary, isn't it? It's so frustrating. And we also talk about Kemi Badenoch wading in on the Burka issue. And there's a question I'm actually asking people today, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the things we're talking about. But 0344 499 1000 is a number to call to have your say on whether or not the UK should ban the Burka and other face coverings. Tell us why you think we should. Tell us why you think we shouldn't. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. You can text on 87222. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. This has come about because of Sarah Boucher, the new Reform MP, asking a question at PMQs last Wednesday, and it was sort of like, rebuffed by Keir Starmer and also criticised as dumb by the then Reform chairman Zia Youssef. He then went on to resign as chairman. Big outcry over that. 48 hours later, he's back in the party in a new role, sort of a Doge-style role. So he's been doing various interviews since, saying that he was under a lot of pressure, he was very tired, worn out, he's been working for free, and basically he's been getting a lot of abuse online, and he just, he'd had enough, basically. Probably good news for Nigel Farage that he's back in. I think he's definitely turned around their fortunes in terms of, you can have the appeal that Nigel Farage has, you can say the things that a lot of people and voters are looking for, but you also need the organisation, the campaign, and the financing on the ground, and he has done that. Always been very impressed with him when I've interviewed him. But it's interesting, Kemi Badenoch, Tory leader, and you're a Conservative, that she has come out and she said, look, she thinks bosses should be able to ban burqas in the workplace. She will not speak to someone in her constituency surgery who comes in to talk to her who is wearing a burqa. She said you have to remove your face covering. This is what Jack Straw, former Home Secretary for Labour, he said this too. I mean, I would forget just the workplace. It's very simple to me. I would, like France and Belgium and numerous other countries in Europe, and indeed some 10 Muslim majority countries in Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East, have banned face coverings, all face coverings, on the basis that, you know, it's not an Islamic requirement. It's culturally foreign to the cultures, whether it's in many of those countries, but particularly to European culture. If you live in this country, you need to show your face in social situations, unless it's very, very, very cold and you need to pull your scarf up when you're walking the street. You show your face. It's the same as someone walking around wearing a balaclava. Socially unacceptable and scary. That's how I feel about the burqa.
Yeah, and it's part of the social contract of trust that we all have with each other. That in this country, you go into a public space and you show your face. Why? Because if we can't see your face, we can't recognise you. Nobody can recognise people by their hands or their gait or the rest. Human beings recognise people by their face.
It's how you smile at people on the street.
Express basic emotions. And part of the reason, in my view, that Islamic men are so extremist Islamic men are so keen to hide women's faces is because they don't want them expressing themselves.
Ta-da.
They don't want them voicing an opinion, showing how they feel.
And in the countries where it is required, and then it is, and the protests we've seen in Iran, oh no, but it's Muslim women, don't interfere with, we don't tell women what to wear, we're told. People are told what to wear all the time. There are rules about, you know, public decency. There are rules about, you know, pubs saying, you know, you can't come in here if you're wearing a football strip. You can't come in here, you know, no shirt, no service, or things like that. You have to dress smartly to go to a nightclub. I mean, I think people should dress more smartly in the workplace, largely. I really do. We have rules all the time about what people can wear and cannot wear. And it seems to me to be very, very clear. And again, you don't have to ban the burqa. You simply ban face coverings. I would go further. I would certainly go along with France. I would ban all religious insignia, including headscarves, in schools, because all of these religious rules, they always impact women and girls more than men. I particularly see, you know, in London, burqa is not abnormal in London at all, whether it's foreigners or British. And it's very much an ideological statement. It's not a requirement in Islam. Is that I'll see, it's a hot day, and I'll see a man walking along, and he's got a T-shirt and shorts on, and his wife is, you know, wearing the full black burqa. I've got to be honest. By the way, feel free to get in touch with me, Prevent, and de-radicalise me. Feel free. Feel free to arrest me for a race crime or a non-crime hate incident. I don't like seeing the burqa. Neither do most women who are forced to wear it around the world. Neither do most Muslim women, because that's why they choose not to wear it, that and the niqab. There's no reason at all for it to be allowed in this country. This idea that you have to be liberal. No. If you allow illiberalism, you're no longer a liberal country. Simple as that.
Yeah, and by the way, we shouldn't forget that migrants that came to this country, and this is largely a matter of migration or the descendants of migrants, they chose to move to a country that had an established culture, that had a way of dressing, that had a way of conducting themselves. And I am not prepared to live in a society in which migrant communities come into this country, continue to speak their own language, practice their own, at times, extreme cultural practices, wear entirely their own clothes, eat entirely their own food, because that tears at the fabric.
What do you wear? If you're in the Middle East, what would you wear? I mean, you're not going to be wearing, you know, local sort of Saudi dress or Dubai dress if you were...
Well, there is a material difference between having a small expatriate community that largely keep themselves to themselves, and you see that in a number of places, between...
So not integrating?
Well,
which is why I wouldn't go and do that, because I wouldn't see the point of it.
Well, here's what you don't see when Brits emigrate to places. They don't ask for society as a whole. They don't expect for that society to change to accommodate them.
Good point.
I do think there is also a matter...
Other than, can we have an English breakfast available at the local pub in Spain
but I also do think, and this is a controversial point, but it's a fair point, there is a question of scale as well.
Yeah.
When you have reached the point in which you are talking about millions upon millions upon millions of people all continuing to hold on to different alien, by which I mean the original meaning of that word, alien cultures, it does tear at the shared social understanding. It undermines trust. These are real, legitimate feelings issues that people feel. I feel them, and I don't think we should be ashamed to ask people that come into this country to go along, at least in the main part, with our shared culture, which includes food, dress, language, values, etc.
And again, and it was fascinating how many of the same people who would say, you can't tell women what to wear, but would say to me, but you should cover your head if you're in an Islamic country. I thought we couldn't tell women what to wear. I mean, again, I remember, years back when in primary school, my daughter, they did a school trip to Regent's Park Mosque, North London, and they said the girls had to cover their heads. And my daughter doesn't cover her head. And I spoke to the mosque. I spoke to Islamic scholars. There's no requirement for prepubescent girls to cover their heads to show modesty to a god they don't believe in, or indeed to a man. And I said, I'm happy for her not to come on the trip. But if you want to educate people about your religion and your places of worship, which I'm more than happy for her to go along to, you cannot require people to basically sign up to your value. She's coming as a non-Muslim to see your mosque, and she was able to go on the trip. And I made it really clear to the school: anyone puts a scarf on my kid will be facing legal action. I'm sorry, I felt really strongly about that. And I wouldn't have a single girl in school wearing any covering.
If Saudi Arabia wants to set a law that requires me to dress in a certain way, it's their choice. It's their choice. I won't be going.
No, exactly.
But that is their choice. We live in a democracy. We live in a culture. There is such a thing as English people, British culture.
Absolutely.
And the inhabitants of this island are permitted, in my view,
to say this is what we find acceptable or not. But of course, you're the great. You can see the reaction from Labour, and there's this criticism one of our callers made earlier. Look, Keir Starmer batted away this sort of like, no, of course he wouldn't be looking at a burqa ban. But again, other liberal countries, more liberal countries than us, you would argue, have done so. But the reality is there's a large Muslim population in this country. There is a large Muslim population voting in Labour-run cities, and he is worried about the vote. But again, most Muslim women don't wear the burqa. If they wanted to, they would be free to do so, but choose not to. Doesn't that tell you something? Just finally, before we go to break, I want to talk about LA. Donald Trump is in trouble. I mean, the coverage of this by the media this morning has been, laughable. Troops were deployed to LA after Donald Trump demanded strong law and order. He basically watched, like other people did, 2 days of, let's face it, riots and violent protests on the streets of Los Angeles and elsewhere. These were people who were protesting against ICE, ICE being the Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers, turning up to actually just raid workplaces and take undocumented foreign migrants with no right to be in the country and to deport them. This is something which is, the law, and has been for many years in America, long before Donald Trump got into politics. There are 2.6 million illegal, undocumented migrants in California right now. There's violent protests. He sends in the National Guard. It's the first time in 6 years it's been done against the will of the governor of the state. This is California Governor Gavin Newsom, one of the worst people on the planet, a massive, awful, pretend faux liberal, hypocrite, lockdown and everything else. But if I lived in LA, I'd be going, thank God Donald Trump has sent the National Guard in.
If the radical left think this is their way to get back into power in America, they have got another thing coming. The American public, much like the British public, believe in immigration laws. They cannot understand why their politicians haven't been enforcing the laws that they seem so keen to enforce everywhere else for the last 40 years. Donald Trump has come into office on a mandate to enforce these laws. He's done exactly that. A bunch of gang members, extreme far-left factions have decided that they wish to conduct a riot that is putting the lives and livelihoods of the people of Los Angeles at risk. The governor of California may decide, because of his crazed politics, that he doesn't wish to enforce the law. The president is entirely entitled to do so himself. In fact, he's not just entitled, he took an oath to do so.
Indeed. We're going to go to a guest in America about this, an American guest, I say. He's over here, Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, up next about that. Love to hear your thoughts. Get in touch, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
We think we do need to leave the ECHR in order to get back control of our borders, in order to make sure that it's the democratically elected British Parliament who decides who can stay here and who needs to leave, which we think should include every single foreign criminal and anyone who attempts to enter the country illegally. We think we need to leave in order to stop veterans, military veterans, being vexatiously pursued, and in order to allow us to decide what oil and gas drilling goes on. So in principle, yes, we need to leave. There are, however, legal details we need to work through.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to Greg Swenson now. He's chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, and talk about what's been going on in Los Angeles, the second biggest city in the United States. Very good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. I have to say, it's been extraordinary watching the scenes of protests, violent protests, largely peaceful protests, as they're always called, people who are on the left. And then the troops being deployed by Donald Trump. And then that being criticised as immoral, even, by Gavin Newsom, the California governor, basically saying, look, I haven't asked for you to do this. You're just ramping up the fanning the flames, even. And we're actually looking at flames right now of cars being burnt and goodness knows what else. What is your take on why on earth the governor of California hasn't got on top of these riots and why he's objecting to the US president trying to do so?
It's unexplainable, Julia. Gavin Newsom, since the Los Angeles fires late last year, since the wildfires, which really could have been the end of his political career, he's made a pivot to the center. He's even gone against men playing in women's sports.
Yeah, he suddenly saw the light on that one, not at all after seeing the polls.
Yeah,
no.
even though a biological man just swept every gold medal possible at the California State Track Championships last week. But anyway, he's saying the right things. But look, I think he just can't help himself. He has to do everything he can against Donald Trump, against the president. It's just unthinkable that he would let this happen, especially given the history in California, going back to the Rodney King riots in 1992. And same with the wildfires. He just, that he let it go. And same with the Mayor Bass. She just let it go until it was too late. And I don't think President Trump will allow that, especially after, some of the mistakes President Trump made in the summer of 2020, where he sat on his hands because he thought that the local authorities would take care of it. And didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, it is laughable. I remember the Black Lives Matter riots, and we saw whole neighbourhoods being burnt to the ground. By the way, largely black-run businesses being burnt to the ground in these areas, and the intimidating action. People literally going to restaurants saying, "Do you support us or not?" And take a knee, and if you didn't take a knee, you got a beating. I mean, I have to say, I'd have struggled with that one. I really would have, for my own safety, but not willing to play along with the madness. But, I mean, people being massively intimidated. And that's what's been going on here. These people are objecting to the law being enacted, not a law under Donald Trump. The law against being an undocumented illegal migrant coming into the country legally and working in the country legally. That's been in place for a long time. That is supported by the vast majority of people. The president has a clear mandate. He said he was going to close the border, stop more people coming in illegally from Mexico, and deport illegal migrants who are already here. He's got a mandate for that. He's got, even on the polls now, massive support for that, I think over 60%. Yeah, and California, astonishing, 2.6 million undocumented migrants believed to be working there.
It's amazing. And I think that, the president has to, as you mentioned, Julia, the president has support on this. Mass deportations of illegal migrants is polling around 70. It's polling at 67 with Hispanics. It's polling at 67.
Who voted for Donald Trump, by the way, in their masses.
but it's also polling at 67 with people that voted for Kamala Harris. It's just common sense. It's a common sense revolution. You mentioned the 2020 riots, the so-called peaceful protests, where there's a church burning behind the camera on CNN. And the other, this is not organic. This is being, some of it might be organic, but it's a lot of highly coordinated,
It's the usual suspects, isn't it? It's anti-Trump, Antifa. They're all. I mean, they're waving the Mexican flag, but I mean, there's lots of people they're the usual suspects who turned up to every sort of event like this.
Yeah, that is correct. And then they gin up the mob. They get the mob all excited. You've got you don't see many American flags flying around there. It's all mostly Mexican flags. It's not helpful that the president of Mexico is encouraging this. It's not helpful that Newsom and Mayor Bass are encouraging this. It's completely irresponsible, absolutely irresponsible.
But in Gavin Newsom, I mean, not only he's just appalling on lockdown, again, the typical hypocrite, he was going off to secret posh restaurants to eat when he was having, when kids were banned from school for a year. Your schools are bad enough as it is, but kids didn't get an education for a year, and then kept them in masks until March 2022. The man should be behind bars, as far as I'm concerned, for what he did. But the key thing is here, he's sort of saying, our economy, I think it's like the 8th largest economy in the world or something. Yeah, but it's funded by illegal migrants paid sort of low wages. But also, crucially, he's lost control of the streets a long time ago. When you see what's going on in San Francisco and LA in terms of the opioid abuse and people just living and defecating on the streets. I mean, it's California is lots of businesses are leaving, lots of people are leaving because they have lost control of the streets. The mass looting that goes on a daily basis. Why on earth is this man being even remotely considered as a possible front-runner in the next presidential election when he can't even run the state he runs properly?
Yeah, all you'd have to do is play a highlight reel of the outcomes in California. The mass migration out of California. The only people that are staying are illegal migrants and homeless people. The only time San Francisco was cleaned up temporarily was when President Xi of China came into town. So he's a communist at heart. He's classic elite. I'm glad you referenced the French Laundry, which is the name of the posh restaurant. By the way, his children don't go to public schools and wear masks. They were probably quite content with private school.
Don't. He's genuine. He could be genuine one of the worst people on the planet. If they run him as their candidate, you guys are guaranteed another 4. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You guys are guaranteed another 4 years. Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, thank you for that. Sam Armstrong, I know you keep abreast of what's going on in America as well, but I mean, it is insane. Even the reporting we're seeing, on the mainstream media here in Britain, again, they're in that same territory of, largely peaceful protests. Yeah, but I'm looking at cars on fire and people pelting rocks at the police. That's not peaceful.
The coverage we're handed in the UK of what goes on in the US is actually the most disgracefully biased reporting that we see on, with the exception of Israel-Palestine, pretty much any issue. There is a reason why Americans are concerned about migration. This is the majority, in fact, it's the overwhelming majority view of American people. It is not some surprise when Donald Trump chooses to clamp down on it. And you can tell why, that when every election that comes around and Donald Trump seems to win, and the British media seem to say, oh, well, that was a surprise.
Weird?
No, it wasn't if you spoke to ordinary Americans, the mechanics, the people who are working 2 jobs, the people who are working in cities, who are seeing the consequences of all of the problems, some slightly different, but some very similar to what we're facing here, and they want action. You can only ask people in this country to go out and look at what is actually going on there, because, look, believe you me, if you just go on what the BBC is saying, you are not seeing the reality of what is going on in America.
Absolutely. 11:35 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Lord Young. He's a Conservative peer. He's also founder of the Free Speech Union, as we've had a threat of murder against the man who burnt a Quran, and also finding out why on earth prevent the anti-radicalisation organisation and strategy in this country would think that just wanting to protect British culture and not have mass uncontrolled immigration would mean you probably are a potential terrorist. Yep, I'm talking about you. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to my next guest. Lord Toby Young is a Conservative peer and founder of the Free Speech Union, and joins us to talk about, well, all things free speech or lack of it in this country. Very good morning to you, Lord Young.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Let's talk first of all about Hamit Çoskan. He is the Turkish man who's sought asylum in this country, fleeing persecution in Turkey because he is an atheist and fleeing the Islamification of that country. He was convicted and fined last week for burning the Quran and disorderly behaviour, and blamed by the judge in the magistrate court for that. Well, we know it was disorderly because it provoked someone to lash at you with a knife and someone else to kick you in the street. So it must have been provocative, offensive behaviour. He has now been told by the authorities that his life is under threat. What's happened?
Yes, the police turned up on his doorstep at 2 a.m. on Saturday morning to notify him that they had identified a credible threat to his life. The conversation was a bit difficult because he doesn't speak English, and they were trying to interpret via a kind of online translation app. And he was told about various security measures he should take, but they refused to leave the notice, which included the advice about the security measures, with him.
So he could seek help about it, yeah.
So he could seek help. He only grasped some of it. And the Free Speech Union have written to Sir Mark Rowley. We wrote to him later on Saturday.
The Metropolitan Police Chief, yeah.
To urge the Metropolitan Police to do more to protect Mr. Çoskan now that they've identified this credible threat on his life. It was the Met who identified the threat. And we think that the Met have a particular responsibility here, not least because they have a responsibility to protect asylum seekers like Mr. Çoskan when there are threats to his life, but also because when he was initially charged by the Crown Prosecution Service, he was charged with causing harassment, alarm or distress to the religious institution of Islam.
Yeah.
And that charge was publicised by the Metropolitan Police. Of course, that's going to provoke some Islamic extremists. And they subsequently withdrew that charge because it was a nonsense charge, as pointed out.
It was a blasphemy charge, and we don't have a blasphemy law in this country, we keep being told.
Well, exactly. So we think they have a particular responsibility to do more to protect Mr. Çoskan now that this credible threat to his life has emerged. And they turned up on his doorstep again in the small hours of this morning to notify him about more details of this particular threat and to advise him to install a security camera, which is quite difficult to do if you're, on benefits, which he is.
Yeah.
Anyway, we hope that now that we've written to the head of the Metropolitan Police, and
there might be some action. But here's the thing: we know that, look, there are lots of people that you and I know who have panic buttons in their homes. They have to not release information about where they are going to be because of Islamist terrorist threats that are routine. We know that many MPs have to face that as well. And yes, okay, some face extremism on the right. The largest threat it comes from Islamist extremists, and this is the norm. We know we've still got a teacher. What, 5 years is it now? Batley Grammar School teacher still in hiding with his wife and 4 children as a result of threats. We never, weirdly, seem to hear about prosecutions of the people who make these threats. If there's a credible threat, presumably they know roughly idea who it might be from, and they could arrest them. Even, not amazing to try and find detail about this man's, given that it is caught on video of a man who's clearly identifiable attacking him with a knife. We understand that some charges have been brought. We're not allowed to know the name of the man. Another man, a delivery driver, clearly seen kicking him on the ground openly. Easy to track a driver. You're on a bike. You're in your delivery identity. We know the company. Easy to track. Well, where this person was on their phone on the day. There never seems to be any police action tackling the people who caused this problem.
No, that's a very good point, Julia. So he was attacked by a man wielding a knife
You can see it on the video.
You can see it on the video. That man, even though he announced his intention to kill Hamid Koskum and attacked him brandishing a knife and slashed at him, has not been charged with attempted murder but with assault. And in addition, as you say, the delivery driver who was passing and who got off his bicycle and started attacking him and kicked him to the ground and spat at him while he was on the ground. No attempt has been made to identify that man. He hasn't been arrested. 2 people attacked him in his then home shortly after the charges were brought, and he was bailed. He was in an asylum hostel, and 2 other asylum seekers, devout Muslims, attacked him, held him at knife point. They were arrested, but they haven't been charged. So it's as if the police are sending a message.
Yeah, it is,
that if you do threaten Hamid Koskum with murder, you won't be, you won't be charged with attempted murder.
Well,
you may
I mean,
not
again,
be charged at all.
This is like the people, who just really thought, well, if you hadn't written the satanic verses, Salman Rushdie, you wouldn't have brought this on you. And this is the thing: we do have a blasphemy law in this country, de facto, and it's not even involving the state. It is the fact that if you do something that could offend some extremists of the Islamic faith, but particularly the Islamist ideology, the likelihood is you will face severe, credible threats to you and your family, and that's why people keep their heads down and zip it, because they don't want to live in fear and hiding it for the rest of their lives, like the Batley School grammar school teacher. We have already got a blasphemy law. We don't even need one written into the statute books, do we?
Well, as you say, one of the really disturbing things about the conviction of this particular man, this political refugee, is that part of the prosecution's case was, well, it must have been disorderly behaviour. You must be guilty of disorderly behaviour because someone tried to attack you. 2 people tried to attack you as you were burning the Quran. And also, you must have caused members of the public harassment, alarm or distress, because had these particular individuals not been caused harassment, alarm or distress, they wouldn't have tried to attack you. That's effectively sending a message to Islamic extremists. If you want to enforce your blasphemy code, if you want people to be punished and prosecuted for breaching an Islamic blasphemy code, all you have to do is react in this irrational, extreme way and attack
criminal
the people
way
you identify as blasphemers, and you will effectively criminalise their conduct by doing so.
It is absolutely, it is so extraordinary, and the judge involved, I mean, again, I think we need to have a wholesale root and branch and look at all our judiciary. Can I ask you also about Prevent, because I'm pretty sure this conversation will get us in trouble. This is the anti-radicalisation programme, Prevent, supposed to be tackling, people, teachers refer, social services, please, look, we're concerned about this person, that they're being radicalised, whether it's online, whether it's something they've seen at school, getting it from home, and we know that they deal with not just Islamist radicalisation, which is the single biggest threat to the public in this country in terms of terrorism, but also far-right radicalism, but that's a much smaller proportion. But a document that has been seen in an online training course hosted on the government's website for Prevent lists cultural nationalism as a belief that could lead to an individual being referred to the de-radicalisation programme, and concern about mass migration as a terrorist ideology. So if you don't think that we should have completely, if you're not happy about uncontrolled mass migration to this country, whether illegal or legal, and you're worried about our national culture being under attack or being threatened and disappearing under the pressure of new arrivals from other overseas, you're probably at risk of being a terrorist, and you need to be de-radicalised and re-educated. Toby, can you sign up for this course? Because I'd like to be there the same week as you. I think it'll be a fun bunch of people, because it's pretty much everyone we know. All of my audience, members of your union, and I'm thinking, the majority of the population of this country, isn't it?
Well, including, I think, the Prime Minister. This was a story broken by the Free Speech Union. So the partner of one of our senior members of staff discovered a Prevent Refresher Awareness course on the Home Office's website. And this is a course that will have been completed by thousands of public sector professionals, people working in education, healthcare, etc. And a section of this course, a chapter entitled Radicalisation, categorises cultural nationalism as one of the most common subcategories of extreme right-wing terrorist ideology.
There you go. What can you know?
And it defines cultural nationalism as encompassing the belief that, quote, Western culture is under threat from mass immigration and a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups poses a threat to social cohesion. That viewpoint, which, as you say, Julia, is very widely shared, including by, I think, the leaders of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and has been articulated by various prime ministers in the past, including David Cameron and Tony Blair, that recently arrived immigrants should do their best to integrate. And if they don't, that does pose a threat to social cohesion. That point of view has been identified as a form of extreme right-wing terrorist ideology in an official Prevent course hosted by the Home Office. It's absolutely extraordinary.
I'll get my handcuffs. But this is what we're dealing with, because this is what the authorities think of us. I mean, ordinary people's views, mass people's views. It is quite extraordinary, isn't it? I do wish they would invite the Prime Minister in for de-radicalisation and re-education. That would be fun to watch. Lord Young, always so good to talk to you. Keep up the great work. Founder of the Free Speech Union there. 11:49 this time. Going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about why on earth is everyone on a fat jab, and why am I paying taxes to get your fat jab on the NHS? Plus, why are child vaccination rates falling? Oh, I wonder. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
These lawyers' costs are not included in this 4.7 billion, and the 4.7 billion figure, Mike, includes the hotel costs. It also includes the kind of the landlord accommodation that the likes of Serco will pay you 5 years, all your rent, all your kind of utilities and stuff. So it's a staggering amount of money. And as you point out there, so 600,000 people have to get up, go to work every single day, pay their taxes, because they earn on average in the UK it's about £38,000 a year. So obviously you earn that money, the government takes the tax, and you need 600,000 of them to pay the asylum accommodation bill.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's go straight to my next guest, Roy Lilly. He's former Trust Chairman for the NHS and joins us to talk about, well, an awful lot of stuff. I want to race through if we can. Roy Lilly, good morning to you.
Morning, Julia. I'm ready. I'm on the blocks.
I'm on the blocks. Here we go. Let's talk fat jabs. The number of fat jabs on prescription in the NHS has doubled in a year, and we are the fat jab nation. 269 million quid was spent on them in 24-25. I mean, we got prescriptions for the big three, Mounjaro, Wegovy and Ozempic, rocketed from 1.4 million the year before to 2.7 million last year. Why on earth is the NHS, why are my taxes paying for people to lose weight? Can't they afford the jabs themselves when they're no longer getting takeaways every night?
I don't know, but the fact is it works. The NHS has weight loss clinics. There are 4 tiers, 1 to 4. Start off with tier 1 with a leaflet and advice. The dropout rate is useless. Tier 2 and 3, the dropout rate's 30%. You get up to
What do you mean dropout rate?
Well, people don't lose weight. I mean, they start by losing weight and then it falls off. And then tier 4 is bariatric surgery and the big interventions which do work. The problem is, Julia, that weight gain is such a big problem later on down the track. You know, you end up with joint problems, COPD, heart, lung, whatever. It's cheaper for the NHS to give people a jab than it is to watch them get fat and fix it up later on. It's cheaper.
Except A, it's cheaper if they don't get the jab paid for and they pay for the jab themselves. That's good motivator. It's also cheaper. I don't know, lock them in my spare room. I'll charge less than the jabs and I'll give them a calorie-controlled diet. We know the stats are really clear, even on these fat jabs, and they work in slightly different ways, different brands, but even on their own studies, max 70% of people lose weight on them. The average, even if you're like 20 stone, is 10% of your weight. If you're 20 stone and you lose 2 stone, that is equivalent to less than £0.5 a week. You can just not get your Starbucks, latte, and every day, and you would lose that amount of weight. And when you come back off the jabs, what a surprise, you put the weight back on. What's the point? This is not a good use of NHS resources.
Well, the NHS think it is. And clinical morbidity...
they're wrong.
Okay.
They're wrong. The stats don't lie. They're wrong.
Clinical morbidity, it starts at about 40%. It is a huge problem for the NHS. I think this has been... tempting for a lot of people. A lot of people are paying for it, of course, as you know.
Or getting it online, which is very worrying.
Yes, and then of course, no doubt they'll all come traipsing into the NHS when they've made a mess of that. But the fact of the matter is, right now, it is a cheap solution to get people to lose weight. The next issue, and you're right, is how do you keep the weight loss off? And if you look at...
Well, they'll carry on taking the jabs forever is what they're going to do. And then we're going to have all the side effects and we'll be paying for that.
This is why I started to tell you about the existing weight loss regimes there are on the NHS. As I say, they're stepped. But at the end of the day, they're not that successful. Bariatric surgery is about the most successful, and that costs a lot of money to do. At the end of the day, it's not the inches around your waistline, it's the 5 inches between your ears. It's how you think and how you...
I'll tell you what works, and it's annoying how well it works, eating less. Just throwing that out there. I've tried it. It absolutely works. It's extraordinary.
It says in the Bible, "Who is he that goeth without prayer and fasting?"
I'm just saying it does work. It's amazing. It does work. Can we also talk about where the NHS is when it comes to migrant workers? Because we've been told for years, we have to have migrant workers in the NHS. They're propping up the NHS because we don't have enough people. When we have a limit on the number of doctors who can train, a limit on the number of nurses that be paid for, and that was supposed to be dealt with, and the government and all the organisations said, look, we'll make sure we actually do train enough of our own people. It emerged at the weekend, though, that ministers have quietly frozen grants that are paid to universities to help them cover the extra cost of training medical workers. They have to have a lot more training than someone doing, an English degree, buying their own books. And basically, this means that we're not going to have as many people training as we thought, whether it's nurses, doctors, radiographers, you name it. And then, of course, what a surprise, we're going to have to import more people to do those jobs. It does seem to me to be utterly crazy.
Well, look, we have got more nurses now than we've ever had, so that's true.
We've got more people than we've ever had.
But we are looking after more people. The other issue here is that they've frozen the training places. They haven't cut them. So the calculation is we have more nurses. If we keep them at this level, that will be enough nurses. It's a gamble because we don't know how many are going to retire. We don't know how many people drop out during training.
We've got more people in an ageing population. Of course that's not going to be enough. It's a real terms cut.
We don't know that.
Well,
and the workforce calculation factors in a lot of other issues around, for example, pregnancy leave, early retirement. A lot of nurses drop out of training. That's been a big problem, people dropping out. And of course, now the migration policy is a lot stricter. It's more difficult to bring nurses in from overseas. And we've been stopped, and I think it's a good thing that we've been stopped, bringing nurses in on the World Health Organization red list. I mean, we were bringing nurses in from Nepal, for God's
well,
sake.
they need their, they pay to train their staff.
They can send us.
Absolutely. Can I just quickly get to, I mean, it's a very important issue, child vaccinations for deadly diseases like measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough. They have slumped to a 10-year low, well below the 95% threshold we need. We know this is an issue. I've always, I mean, MMR, absolutely, it's nothing to discuss. You get your kid MMR, you're crazy not to. We had all this stuff with the lies, complete lies, made up lies by Andrew Wakefield about causing autism. It does not, full stop. However, we've also got, I mean, massively low rates now. Is part of that down to Andrew Wakefield? Is it down to migrant communities moving in, because the areas where it's lowest, migrant communities, or is it down to lots of distrust of the medical establishment over to COVID?
I think it's more COVID than Wakefield. Wakefield, I think, was a long time ago, and a lot of people just won't ever have heard of it. But I'd tell you the solution. We should do what they do in Australia. No jabs and your kids can't start school. Piece of paper, I've got my kids' jabs.
Many American states.
Simple.
That they are, the thing is, they are at risk. I believe in bodily autonomy, but they're just, most of the people making these arguments against getting their kids jabbed are utterly ill-informed. I mean, you know, I mean, again, I'm much more untrusting of the scientific medical establishment, but this is crazy. Roy Lilly, we raced through those. Thank you so much for covering all those topics. I'll get Sam Armstrong's thoughts on some of those coming up in just a few moments. Love to hear your thoughts as well. 0344 499 1000. If you haven't had your kids jabbed, I'd love to hear from you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey!
87222, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Although I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so many to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what... Says no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Welcome back to the show, or welcome to the show if you've just joined us. Well, if you've just joined us, you have missed a rip-roaring couple of hours. So much more to talk about in the next hour as well. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is great to have your company. Coming up, we are going to be talking more about what's been going on in LA. Going to talk about Greta Thunberg being, quote, kidnapped by the Israeli authorities, and also the burqa. Should it be banned or not? Plus, Britain's £4.7 billion annual cost of keeping migrants in hotels. It effectively takes every penny of tax paid by the equivalent of the population of Manchester. That is where your money is going. Don't forget, if you miss any part of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. You'll never guess what it's called. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. I know, easy to find, right? On YouTube, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe so that you never miss a thing. Why would you ever want to do that? Just some breaking news to bring you. In the last couple of minutes, just under embargo, it was announced in just 3 minutes ago, 9 million pensioners will receive winter fuel payments this winter. All pensioners in England or Wales with an income of £35,000 a year or below will once again benefit from the winter fuel payment. This extends eligibility to the vast majority of pensioners, with around 9 million of also over 3/4 benefiting. So there'll be a 1 million plus or a couple of million who won't get it. The better off pensioners won't get it. It's going to cost around £1.25 billion. It will see means testing of the winter fuel payment. They will be saving around £450 million in total. This is what the Office of Budget Responsibility is going to have to sign off on, but this is going to be part of what's going to be announced in the spending review by the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Of course, after the huge fuss last summer, one of the first announcements of the Labour government that they were going to basically get rid of the winter fuel payment being a £300 annual payment to all pensioners and only pay it to those who were receiving pension credit on the lowest incomes. Huge outcry across the board on that issue. We've seen Reform and the Tories saying they would reinstate that, whether or not it would be taxed at some level or not. A move that I think we can safely say they pretty much had no political choice but to make. But basically, unless you're a higher earner pensioner, unless your income is even in retirement, 35 grand a year or more, you will be getting your winter fuel payment back this winter. Well, joining me to talk about this is commentator Sam Armstrong, joined us throughout the show. There's no doubt at all this is a U-turn that has been forced on the Prime Minister, arm being put behind the back of the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. It was a stupid policy announcement in the first place. Huge damage. The biggest breakthrough policy in terms of people's awareness of a policy and their disagreement with it that the government has announced in the last 11 months. Yeah, this was Keir Starmer's Gordon Brown selling the gold moment. We were told there was no money. We couldn't afford it. £22 billion black hole. Turns out there is. We're told that the only place you could set the threshold was the £13,000 a year pension credit cut-off. Turns out we can set it at 35. Yeah. We were sold a pup for a year by a new government that came into office having received very little of the over 60s vote, who decided to basically punish old people by freezing a good number of them to death. Yeah. Their own figures said pensioners would freeze to death. They did it. They did it deliberately. They did it at the same time they were handing massive pay rises out to train drivers. Yeah. We're told that it's going to cost 1.25 billion. Well, they managed to find 4 billion quid a year to pay for migrant hotels. So you're darn right they can pay a billion quid a year to keep pensioners from freezing. This was a disgraceful policy. Why it's taken them till now, I can't work out. It shows you everything that's wrong with this government. They waited for all the damage to be done. I don't think they're going to get the brownie points for reinstating it. People are going to remember that this is what they did, and they knew there are millions of people who are on very low incomes as pensioners, and those who were actually entitled to pension credit who are not claiming. Some 800,000 who were entitled who are not claiming it, and there are many who are just above that threshold. That said, I don't see why my parents, who've got a perfectly nice income, they can afford to heat their own homes as much as they want, should be getting the extra money, other than the fact that a lot lot of benefits aren't means tested for a reason. It costs more to means test it, the admin, than it does the money you're going to save. And those people are already paying tax. They should simply add it on to the pension. And then if you're a pensioner who's got a good income, you'll be paying tax on it. And if you're on low income, you'll just get that money as normal. I don't know why they have to make it any more complicated. I think it's very patronising for the British government to say, oh, you're old. Oh, let me give you £300 towards your heating bill at a certain time of the year. So that's a sod off. If living on pension in this country, you can't afford to put your heating on in winter, shouldn't we be raising the pension?
Yeah, and let's not forget, these are people who have paid in their entire lives into the system. And they did so under an understanding, in trust, that when they needed help, that when at the end of their life they were infirm or unable to work, that the state would have their
Let me
back
tell you
at the
though,
end of
if
it.
you're a lot younger than me, Sam, if you seriously think that you're going to be getting the sort of pension entitlement that pensioners are currently getting, think again. You'll be working till 80.
Having seen this lot, I'm expecting absolutely nothing. The British state does not exist to look after, care for, protect, help, embolden people like me. It doesn't work for me. The British state now works for other people. Pensioners in this country, they know that. Farmers, they know that. Increasingly, millions of people in this country are coming to the realisation that this government, that pretty much every government of whatever colour, has stopped working for them. It's working for other people, and that is what is making people sick to the back.
I really think it is. It really is. Well, look, let's talk to our first guest of this hour about this and various other stories very much linked to that. Benhabib is former deputy leader of Reform UK and joins us. Very, very good afternoon to you, Ben.
Good afternoon.
Your reaction to the news, it was announced at midday that the government is going to basically hand back that £300 annual winter fuel payment to most of the pensioners they took it away from. If you're earning 35 grand a year or more, you won't get it, but everyone else will. Means tested, and lots of the pensioners who really did lose out last winter are going to get it back. Do you welcome that news?
I do welcome the news. I mean, I'm not in favour generally of increasing the size of state spending, but I absolutely welcome that news when you consider all the other endeavours on which the state has been splurging money, including in your opening remarks for this segment. You cited the £4.5 billion being spent on illegal migrants in hotels. If we can afford that, we can certainly afford to look after our elderly. And I think the bill was meant to be £1.5 billion in order to reinstate this this privilege. And as Sam rightly said, these are people who've paid their taxes all their lives. And there was a social contract. There is a social contract which repeatedly gets trounced between the government and the people on various issues. And as far as pensioners are concerned, this was part of that social contract. The WASPy women, another really good example, where we were told all our lives you could retire at a particular age, and then they suddenly moved the goalposts. But I can tell you something if Sam is listening. In 1989, when I was 24 years old, I could smell the direction of travel for pensions. And I decided then that I wouldn't waste money paying my well-earned income into a pension in the hope that the government would eventually allow me to get it back. I could see even then they were beginning to change the goalposts.
Or also you'd be penalised if you do save. And again, we see this again and again. Look, let me bring on to you, mentioned this about the cost of those migrant hotels, front page of The Sun today, pointing out, and these are figures that have been put together by the statistics expert, Jamie Jenkins, big friend of the show. And it's when these stats are put to us in this sort of format, it makes them easier to understand, because we talk about, millions and billions. I mean, it sort of becomes meaningless, doesn't it? But he's pointed out that the £4.7 billion annual bill to keep migrants in hotels and hostels and look after them makes every single penny of tax from 582,000 workers for the whole year. That is the equivalent to the entire population of Manchester. So if you're in Manchester, equivalent, you go to work today, you get your money, the pay, you get your net pay, the gross pay, you go, good Lord, how much have I paid? All that money has gone to pay for migrants in hotels, illegal migrants. It is absolutely extraordinary, these numbers, isn't it?
It's horrendous. And the figure that you've got, I'm sure, is a fraction actually of the real figure. They hide the real figures. And by my own calculation, the 100,000 or so people that effectively living off the state illegally must be costing well over £50,000 a year. We can't keep people in prison for less than £50,000 a year. And so these people are not in prison. They're in 5-star, 4-star hotels.
I think they got them out. They got them out the 5 and 4 stars. They have to be in something lower grade.
Okay.
They won't pay for it. But again, it has a massive impact on local communities, even if they're in hostels, even if they're in private accommodation. As we know, that simply takes up private accommodation that's no longer available to a British family.
Exactly, and then there's all the knock-on effects on our infrastructure, and the real impact is obviously what it does for our culture in this country.
Hold on a minute. Wait a minute. I'm going to have to refer you to Prevent. If you're concerned about mass immigration, if you are concerned about the culture of our country and the impact on that, it is very likely you're at risk of becoming a terrorist and you need to be de-radicalised.
That is remarkable, isn't it? That Prevent...
So official document on the Home Office website.
Refused to recognise the threat that Axel Rudakabana posed to society, and yet would arrest, presumably, someone like you and someone like me.
Yeah, most of my audience.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the knock on the door.
I mean, come and get me. I'm just saying, I've said to Toby Young a little bit earlier, it would be actually, let's all go in the same week to be de-radicalised. That re-education camp is going to be an absolute hoot. All the best people. What do you make, by the way, and talking on the migration issue, what do you make of what's happening in America, those LA riots where Gavin Newsom, the Democrat California governor, is criticised as immoral Donald Trump's decision to send in the National Guard to try and quell the, quote, largely peaceful, they're always largely peaceful protests, where we've seen, cars being burnt, whole highway being closed down, and people being, officers being pelted with rocks and other ammunition.
Well, Donald Trump is trying to reverse the direction of travel that we are still set on, which is this preparedness to, effectively protect, promote just about any individual in the United Kingdom, in his case in the United States, that isn't a British citizen or an American citizen. That seems to be our approach to governance. And he's absolutely right that he should be cracking down on it. It's sad that that kind of draconian police presence is required, but it's symptomatic of years and years of bad governance. Of course, we need a holistic approach, and at the risk of, irritating Prevent again, we need to dramatically reduce migration into our respective countries. We need to stop illegal migration. We need to grow the backbone required to deport people. We need to prevent people who've come to this country, either illegally or illegally, frankly, at the moment, with the mass migration taking place, from getting indefinite leave to remain, and so on and so forth. And en route to that, if we're going to have the kind of trouble that they've got in California, then sadly, we will have to take draconian measures. It would be much better to get a grip of the root problems so that we don't have to take those draconian measures. But if that happens, then you've got to do it.
Yeah.
And
again, it's utterly bizarre. And again, the support for Donald Trump on this issue is actually across party. It's very interesting. Can I bring you on to where we are with Reform, your old party, one of the many people who have left working with Nigel Farage over the years? We saw Zia Youssef, the chairman, resign in a fit of pique over this question. Sarah Pouchin, the new Reform MP, asked at PMQs last week about banning the burqa. It was kind of a bit of where did that come from moment. He then back within the party within 48 hours after praise was heaped on him, people asking him to stay. What do you make of what is going on at Reform right now? Has this damaged the party? Why do you think that Zia Youssef did leave, and why do you think he's back in the fold?
So, just a couple of things. The first thing that was remarkable, I think, is that Reform didn't have a settled view on the question of the burqa, because
I was surprised by that.
Yeah, it's very surprising to me because, fundamentally it correctly stands against multiculturalism, the promotion, protection and celebration of all these different cultures that have come to the United Kingdom. It stands against that, and therefore should have a view on the burqa, apart from the fact that the burqa, in my view, is the most obvious rejection of British culture, which includes the emancipation of women at its heart. And this is the outward representation of the repression of women. And so I would have thought it had a settled position on the burqa, and that it irritated Zair Yusuf so much tells me that they haven't really given thought to the political philosophy that the party has. And that's been one of my criticisms, frankly, of Farage, that he's terrific at reading the room and where the media wants him to go, but he doesn't really have a settled political, philosophical framework. That's the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing is the party doesn't have a structure and a constitution, checks and balances and processes about which I've been very critical, which would have prohibited her asking a question in PMQs about which the chairman was unaware, and would have prohibited the chairman in turn from tweeting something that was against her. And, you know, they need to grow up and develop policies internally that control themselves.
A grown-up political party, yeah.
Absolutely. And then the third thing here, which is, leads on from Zair's return, is what the devil is going on at the top of the party. This man was exhausted, as they say he was, and he needed a break or whatever. He can't just come back 48 hours later. And there's something very odd in the relationship between Nigel Farage and Zair Yusuf. Nigel Farage is not... well, there is, because Nigel Farage, historically, I don't think there's a single individual to whom you can point who's left the party and Nigel hasn't absolutely trounced, and including myself. But with Zair Yusuf, he was quite reluctant for Zair Yusuf to go, and he welcomed him back with open arms. So it's a teacher pet kind of thing going on. I don't know what it is, but it's a bit weird.
Maybe he understands the key role that Zair Yusuf has played. But there we are. Benhabib, very interesting, former deputy leader of Reform UK. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate that. Covered a lot of ground. I'm going to say Nigel Farage is actually out speaking on stage in Wales right now, sort of rallying cause this kind of start of their campaign in Wales. They're hoping, obviously, Welsh Assembly elections next year they're looking for. He's said Labour is in the state of blind panic in terms of their U-turn that he, of course, called for on the Winfield allowance. Sam Armstrong, your reaction in particular to where we are on Reform UK. You're a Conservative. There's no doubt. We saw that the by-election for the Scottish the Holyrood post, which Labour won, but we saw Reform come from a couple of hundred votes to third place with 26,000 votes. That tells you they are on a roll.
Yeah, the Tories and Labour may well be feeling quite happy about last week with Reform, with the blow-up with Zair. But I actually think there is something, I don't agree with Ben, but there's something in what he says, which is that in the past, Nigel has had a big problem. He falls out with people. Anybody else with talent builds up a bit of a
he doesn't take criticism well, shall we say that?
Makes their own views plain. They fall out, it's a Barney, etc. It's happened time and time again. It was a pattern. And it was a problem because you can't be Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland without a team and a competent team around you that's going to do it. And if he wants to do it, if he wants to take the big step up, he needed to solve that. Now, Zair fell into exactly that mould. Got very big, it disagreed with Nigel on some things, fell out over policy, etc. What I saw last week, I think, was a growing maturity in Nigel Farage as a politician, that he was faced with this situation, and it's going to happen from time to time. People are going to fall out. You're going to get it.
Let's not pretend that everyone isn't, disagreement within the Labour ranks, Lib Dem ranks and Tory ranks.
Exactly. It's part and parcel of British politics. But instead of throwing his toys out the pram, instead of trashing the guy, he took steps, he made efforts, and he's patched it up as best as probably could be done in the circumstances. And I just would say to the Conservative Party, to the Labour Party who are watching this, yes, it's been a bad week for Reform in some ways, but careful if you've not just seen Nigel Farage stepping up to the plate to show that he's now ready to be a serious major political party, and careful that you're not going to see an even more dangerous Nigel Farage coming down the line.
Very interesting. That's from a Conservative commentator there, Sam. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to some of your calls. I promise you've got more time for calls coming up at the end of the show. Lots of top guests coming up, and we've got a competition to get to and everything. But I want to get to Ian, who's in London. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000 to have his say on the Greta Thunberg Freedom Flotilla. Well, they're no longer free. They've been, in her words, kidnapped by Israeli forces, having been stopped from getting into the shore of Gaza. Ian, what do you want to say?
I'm lucky. I've just come back from a holiday that went to Turkey, Greece, and everywhere else. Right
on the Freedom Flotilla, yeah.
Well, no, I promise you, it went that way. But when I went to to Turkey, I felt so frightened being Jewish, especially for me, my girlfriend, and other people on board. Everywhere you looked, kill the Jews.
Really?
Not kill Israel, kill Jews.
Wow.
They're killing up, kill the Jews on the walls and everything else. It's terrifying.
I mean, London's bad enough right now, but that is very worrying. I'm so sorry about that. It's just so terrifying. But what did you make? What did you make of Greta Thunberg and her little chums on that?
Well, I want to know if I can be in the next Titanic, in Titanic 3, where I can stand at the very front of the ship and go, "I'm free," and all this sort of stuff. I've never known the girl,
young woman, 23-year-old.
Yeah, sorry, the woman. She is absolutely off her head. There is on TikTok a very funny sort of like little video clip of her when she's saying it, and the actual background to it is what the terrorists did on October the 7th.
Yeah.
So it's actually sort of quite funny that they're using that to go. But it just shows you, and as you said before, you, me, anybody in their own kitchen have got more than what's there. But the worst
in terms of the aid they were bringing in,
Yeah. But the worst thing to all of that is the UN and the Red Cross are supposed to be impartial, yeah? You've got the UN person, Ambezi, is it? Where she's saying there should be more ships doing the same thing, more like trying to do. So wait a minute, how can she be impartial where she's really just saying you've got to do it? And it's been proven that she's like, let her come after me, she's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I know. No, it is just extraordinary. It really is. I mean, again, the so-called international community. I'm ashamed of the stuff that our own Prime Minister, certainly our Foreign Secretary, has to say on this issue, and they're doing it because they, performative virtues. Your Dawn Frenches and your Gary Linekers, and they, Just go to Israel and speak to the people who've had that experience. And this idea, and they throw out the word genocide and starvation, is not what's happening. I don't mind people having a different view, but can we at least all agree on what the facts are? That's all it is. Ian, thank you for your call. 12:23 is the time. Right now, we are giving you the chance to win FIFA Club World Cup final tickets. That's thanks to our friends at DAZN. And here's everything that you need to know.
Hi, it's Jim White here. Here at talkSPORT, we're gearing up for the Club World Cup in the United States. And to celebrate, we've got 2 tickets to the final in New York on July the 13th to give away. We'll sort flights, accommodation, and give you £5,000 spending money to spend however you like. 18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. All you have to do to enter is text the word football to 83338 by the 13th of June at 11 p.m. and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or send your name and number by post to Club World Cup Final Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on June the 18th.
This is a TalkSPORT limited competition run on TalkSPORT Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Do not miss out on this incredible giveaway, thanks to our friends at DAZN. Good luck to you. 12:24 is the time. Up next, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be hearing from Ivonne Ridley. She's a journalist. She's a pro-Palestinian activist and someone who thinks that apparently October the 7th was overhyped. She was due to be on that freedom flotilla with Greta Thunberg. We'll talk to her about that. Up next, you don't want to miss out. This is Talk.
Zia had been working 24/7, 7 days a week,
And like all of us, sometimes you want to take too much on, and you're just pushing on. And look, he was exhausted. He regrets his tweet. What Nigel's agreed with here is that he will focus on Doge. It is such a big opportunity to save money, to prove we can do it in these councils. I'm very focused on the pension side of it, where again there's huge sums to be saved. What we've got to show the good British people is that we can deliver.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 12:27 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong still with me. Plenty more coming up. Just want to remind you of that breaking news we had just at midday, that 9 million pensioners will receive winter fuel payments this winter. All pensioners in England and Wales with an income of or below 35 grand a year. If you're earning over 35 grand a year, you're not going to get your winter fuel payment back. If you're earning under that, which is most pensioners, you are going to get it back this winter. That's a confirmation that's come much sooner than many had thought it wasn't going to be until the not a spending review on Wednesday, but even the budget this autumn from Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. I think Labour Party have realised, as indeed the leader of Reform, Nigel Farage, has said in a speech in Wales a few moments ago, running scared, and they fear, of course, the damage they are getting done to them on this issue. Running around, he says, in a state of blind panic over this issue. It's been a huge cut-through issue, mass criticism from across the political board, left and right, on that cut to winter fuel payments to millions of pensioners, including those on very low incomes indeed. So that will be returned this autumn to all but the better off pensioners. I'm sure many will be welcoming that. If you want to get in touch, I'm going to take your calls after about 1:45. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Right now, though, let's talk about this. Greta Thunberg on the so-called Freedom Flotilla to Gaza, getting intercepted by the Israeli forces. They said they'd intercept them, and they did. She recorded a video just before this, and this is what she had to say.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
Kidnapped, she claims, needs to be released. Well, she will be released. She'll be flown home. I'm not sure whether the Swedes want her back or not, but let's talk about this with journalist Ivonne Ridley, who joins us once again. Good afternoon to you, Yvonne.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. What do you make of Greta Thunberg using the term kidnapped when she was taken by Israeli forces, who gave them sandwiches and bottles of water, taken to shore, and will now be shown the video of what happened on October the 7th and then sent home? That's not a kidnapping, is it, when people are actually still, dozens of them, still kept in tunnels by Hamas, who were kidnapped on the October the 7th? Should she have used that term?
Well, she was kidnapped. She was in international waters on board a humanitarian aid vessel heading towards Gaza. And according to the UN laws and regulations, anyone carrying humanitarian aid into a war zone should be allowed in unimpeded. As I say, this was in international waters, and the law is quite clear. If they'd been in Israeli territorial waters, or that would have been a different matter. But it was a British registered ship, which should have been allowed safe passage to deliver the aid that it had on board.
OK, a number of things. I think actually it's not quite so clear-cut as you say. Countries are entitled to instigate blockades when there is a war zone. Gaza is quite clearly a war zone. You say it was an aid vessel. It was a bunch of people who were doing selfies for Instagram. There was probably less aid on that boat. It's a tiny little vessel. Probably less aid on that boat than, frankly, the stuff that most of us have got in our own kitchen cabinets right now in terms of the aid they were actually going to bring. Even they admitted it was, it was sort of it was sort of making a gesture.
It was symbolic.
It was symbolic. So it wasn't aid, was it? So was it an aid vessel? or was it a symbolic aid vessel? Which is because one of them will actually help people and one doesn't. So it wasn't an aid vessel. So we both agreed that, right?
People starving in Gaza. Starving, according to the medical experts.
According to the medical experts, who aren't allowed to say anything unless they say what Hamas has told them.
Because journalists are not being allowed into Gaza.
Why are journalists not allowed into Gaza?
Well, you tell me. Israel is obviously trying to hide some of the war crimes that it has been investigated for.
Well, they're not doing it very well, are they? Because we're constantly being shown evidence, we're told, of war crimes by Israel. So they're not hiding it very well.
Well, no, they're not. We've had IDF soldiers being arrested in various parts of the world who've been recognised as committing war crimes. You know, you talk about the selfie yacht. Well, what about the selfie IDF filming themselves in women's underwear, women that they've probably killed?
Probably. I mean, probably. There's no doubt at all in war. There are people on all sides, and we've in the British Army who have done wrong, and actually it's the other fellow soldiers who are the most appalled by those crimes, and people get arrested and prosecuted, and quite rightly. However, let's come back to our selfie yacht. I think there's a very good reason why Israel doesn't want Western journalists into Gaza, because A, they can't protect them, and B, there is a very big issue, we already see it, with Hamas controlling people. We know this has already happened in Lebanon, where we have got where Western, where Western journalists go in, and they know, and this happens to Palestinian so-called journalists in Gaza, if you say stuff we don't want you to say, you and your family are at risk of reprisals, and we know those reprisals are very real from a murderous terrorist group. We would not get honest reporting. People wouldn't be safe, and it wouldn't be honest reporting.
Hundreds of senior journalists of the quality of Jeremy Bowen have said...
Oh, well, the quality of Jeremy Bowen.
You know, it's... What right does Israel have to dictate to newspapers who they should and should not let into the war zone? Journalists take risks every day, and there are some really senior veteran journalists who are prepared to take those risks and go in.
They are, and on balance, I would see those journalists. On balance, I would. Again, you went into Afghanistan. You were kidnapped there. I have to say, I'm not entirely sure. Given that apparently the BBC and Sky and everyone else are able to get all of their information from Palestinian journalists on the ground in Gaza, I'm not quite sure why you think the truth isn't getting out, because we're told every single day of apparently yet another atrocity committed by Israel. So I don't know why you think that we're not getting the real news about what's coming out of Gaza, because every report I see fulfills your narrative beautifully.
Well, the truth is getting out, but
so
at
what's
the same time, there is no substitute for having your own person on the ground reporting with that byline from Joe Blogs in Gaza. And every journalist in Fleet Street would say to you, there is no substitute for having your own person on the ground, your own eyes and ears. I've worked with the journalists in Gaza before. I've met many of them. And yes, I have.
I bet you have, Yvonne, given your views. Yes, I'm sure you were very welcome there as one of the, and I mean this in the most loving way, one of the useful, pro-Palestinian useful idiots, yes, who will spout any anti-Israeli, pro-Hamas nonsense that you're encouraged to do.
Well, you would say that.
Yeah, because I do facts.
I have met the journalists and the men and the women who've bravely reported. 220 are now dead.
220 people who put on a press vest. Targeting of journalists is a war crime, absolutely. However, an awful lot of the people, like those journalists in the press outfits who are filming the release of Hamas hostages, along with the International Red Cross, who are getting the girls to pose, look happy for the cameras as we release you back to your family members after raping and starving you in the tunnels for months on end. Those journalists, or are those ones okay?
Look, I didn't see that.
Oh, you didn't see it? That's weird, because it was on all over social media. It was played on national news, I recall. Those journalists were there. They were completely safe there. Were those journalists filming what Hamas wanted them to film? Were they journalists? Would you have done that?
I would say that they're probably the same as the Western journalists during the liberation of Kabul, who were paying people $50 a time to shave off their beards for the camera. Unfortunately, there are people in our profession who sell their principles down
Yes, there are, aren't there? Let's talk about selling out our principles, Ivonne Ridley, because when I knew you and worked with you at the Sunday Express many years ago, I believed you to be someone of integrity and someone who cared about facts. You did an interview yesterday in which you talked about how October the 7th had been overhyped. Your word, overhyped. What did you mean by that?
40 beheaded babies is a bit of an exaggeration.
No, that's a massive lie. There weren't 40 beheaded. No. When I talk about October the 7th, when Israel talks about October the 7th, when any official, when any journalist who knows anything about it talks about October the 7th, they never mention there being 40 beheaded babies, because it was a confusion from one journalist on one day that went around the world, which has been totally debunked. So
it wasn't just one journalist.
It was one journalist who said it. It was one journalist who said it, and she had misunderstood what she had been told by an IDF soldier.
And they were all the first responders from the Zaka charity who invented stories about what they saw.
Did they?
I've read, I'm going to pronounce this all wrong, Yadioth Aronoth, the Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, and the Israeli Times, who have all reported on October the 7th because they stopped and said there's too much contradiction coming here. And so they looked at the narrative, and it was over-exaggerated.
It was what was exaggerated? Wait a second, I want to clarify. Were 1,200 people killed that day?
Yes, there were.
Okay, no. Were women murdered and raped and mutilated before they were murdered on that day?
I don't know if they were raped.
You don't know if they were raped?
No, I don't.
You don't know, even though Hamas fighters themselves have actually filmed the rapes. They've been found on their own body cams and put on social media.
I have.
But you don't know.
Body cams, but I do remember a family saying our daughter has not been raped, she was murdered, and they were very, very upset.
Oh, so one family's daughter wasn't raped. Brilliant. Were children killed deliberately on October the 7th?
There were teenage twins who were killed. There was one baby that was killed.
One baby.
One baby.
That's all the children. You got three. Okay. Was anyone mutilated? Was anyone mutilated? Were bodies mutilated, and were families burnt alive on October the 7th?
I did see raped and mutilated bodies, but they were.
I thought they weren't raped. I thought no one was raped. You told me a minute ago they weren't raped.
Well, hold on. These were of Iranian Kurdish fighters, and what on earth their photographs were doing mixed in with the October 7th photographs.
Okay, when were 251 people taken hostage by Hamas and others from Gaza and taken into Gaza and taken as hostages?
They were.
They were, okay. And when some of those women, some alive, some dead, with mutilated, naked, blood-strewn bodies, when they were paraded through the streets, did a load of Palestinian civilians cheer and spit and beat those bodies? Did you see any of those videos? Did that happen, or was that overhyped?
Yes, that happened.
That happened. Okay, and when the hostages who've been released were released, were any of those, in their experiences in that time, were they starved, tortured, beaten, and in some cases sexually abused and raped? Did that happen?
If you say it does, and
it's not me. I wasn't there. I'm not saying it happened. The people who it happened to said it happened. Do you believe them? Do you believe those hostages, or are they lying?
I'm still looking into, but October the 7th does not give an exemption pass for Israel.
Didn't ask that. You said October the 7th was overhyped. How do you overhype a massacre involving 1,200 people, rape and mutilation and hostage taking? How do you overhype that?
I just said before, the 40...
No, that's debunked. That's long debunked. Over a year ago, and you're still going on about it. I'm not talking about the stuff that didn't happen. I'm talking about the stuff that did happen. Was it over? How is that overhyped?
About that, the President of the United States, the last one, still hasn't apologised.
And he should, because it was untrue. It was untrue. But this is why facts matter. Ivonne, we're going to have to leave you here. But I mean, just want to say, you were supposed to be on that freedom flotilla. Why didn't you go?
I was supposed to be on the Conscience, which was blown up in Malta by Israel. Of course,
I don't know the details on that. Okay, but would you go on the next one?
Country.
Would you go on the next one, and would you like to would you like to go to Gaza?
Go on the next one.
Do you think you'd be welcomed there?
On the next one.
Do you think you'd be welcome there?
In Gaza, absolutely. Yes, I'd be welcome.
Oh, I'm sure they'd love you.
Israelis, obviously.
All right. Ivonne Ridley, you've probably got a better chance of surviving if you're in Israel than Gaza. Ivonne, I so appreciate you joining us. I am, as always, utterly appalled by your views on this, but I'd rather hear them. I'd rather have people hear them so we can challenge them. 12:42 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back to Sam Armstrong. We're also going to be talking to Matthew Bryce about what on earth is going on in LA. And we'll take your calls as well. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. We are running, as you can imagine, a little bit on the late side. I often end up doing this because I get rather involved in the conversations, as I'm sure you can understand. Sam Armstrong is still with me. And Sam, it's just a brief response to what Ivonne Ridley had to say.
It's nice to know whose side you're on, isn't it? And I happen to be on the side that aren't raping women, that aren't killing a baby, that aren't kidnapping people. And I'm glad to know that Ivonne isn't on the same side as me.
I sleep at night. Put it that way. I sleep at night. Thank you for that. Let's go right now to Matthew Bryce. He's a former White House official. He was in the Obama administration. Talk to him about what's going on in LA as we've seen the President Donald Trump deploy the National Guard to quell apparently largely peaceful protests. They're always largely peaceful on the left, aren't they? Even when we've seen cars set on fire and the police being pelted with missiles. Very good afternoon to you, Matthew, and apologies for keeping you waiting so long.
My pleasure, Julia. I enjoyed listening.
It was lively. It's a very, very painful conversation, but what can we say? I mean, look, it's interesting. Gavin Newsom, the California governor, who's Democrat, I hope, he thinks he's going to be the next Democrat candidate for president next time round. He's sort of horrified, saying this is immoral for the president to send in the National Guard. He hasn't asked permission. Last time this was done was 60 years ago to protect civil rights campaigners in Alabama. But I mean, what's immoral about the president sending in law enforcement to enforce the law?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what law enforcement is supposed to do. What complicates the issue here, or sharpens the point, I should say, is that Los Angeles, like San Francisco, Chicago, my hometown, is considered a sanctuary city, which means that the local police, municipal police, won't help federal law enforcement agents enforce anti-migration measures.
So the local police in those Democrat-run strongholds will not enforce the law, which is the job of the police.
Yeah,
I mean, it is
true.
the law, and has been for a very long time, that you cannot be an illegal migrant in America.
Yeah, true. So there's a constitutional issue here, too, whereby the California state legislature passed a law a few years ago that said local law enforcement can't help federal law enforcement agents. So in the case of fighting migration, illegal migration. So that's a constitutional issue that needs to be resolved somehow.
I mean, it really, really does. I'm thinking this is a basic issue for law and order, and I still find it utterly fascinating that Gavin Newsom is elected as a governor in that state after the abject failings of what he did over lockdown and everything since. Those green, insane policies that are leading to so many businesses leaving, but also what is going on in terms of the opioid abuse on the streets and the shanty towns set up in LA and San Francisco and elsewhere. He's not in control of it. But certainly when it comes to basic law and order, in 2020 we saw the Black Lives Matter riots and massive disorder, huge damage to public property and private property. Terribly, whole black neighbourhoods burnt down, black businesses burnt down, apparently in the pursuit of black rights by largely white Antifa activists. But it's quite clear these people they're basically opposed to what ICE are doing. This is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Officers, but they are carrying out the law of the land, are they not? They are coming in, they're raiding workplaces known to have a large number of illegal migrant workers. They're seeing if you're undocumented, and they're taking them away, and they're going to be deported. That's not just the law of the land, it's a mandate from the American people, including having support from the majority of Democrat voters.
Yeah, I mean, 54% of Americans in the most recent polls support these measures by the Trump administration to enforce immigration law. And there is a debate about, are there due process rights that illegally arriving migrants have in the United States? The Trump administration says no. Others argue yes, but I firmly agree with what you said, Julia, that these federal law enforcement agents have a duty and a responsibility to enforce the law. And, these decisions are unpopular, especially in these largely Mexican-American, Latino communities. And the protests are expressions of political views, and people have a right to express those views, but not when they become violent.
Yeah, but it is interesting because the Latino people of America, voters, gave a very strong endorsement, didn't they, in large numbers of Donald Trump, very much supportive of this, partly because also often they may be people who are on the bottom rung of the ladder as legal migrants, and actually they know the people who are most hurt by mass illegal immigration and undocumented workers who aren't being paid a fair rate because they've got no way of negotiating for it because they're not legally in the country, is actually people at the bottom end of the rung. California has 2.6 million undocumented migrants, and that is untenable.
It is untenable, and what you say is right. In my own experience with immigrant families, whether they be Eastern Europeans like my family or Latin Americans, it's true. The people who follow the rules and work their way up through society are very much against illegal migration or immigration. Absolutely true. In this case, I mean, there's a counter argument that in California, so many jobs that these migrants or illegal migrants do are not taken up by Americans. They do a lot of backbreaking labor,
because they don't pay enough.
Right,
We've got the same thing here. But the only reason those jobs don't pay well is because they can get undocumented workers on the cheap. I mean, that's the thing. Mass immigration, legal and illegal, undermines the pay of people at the bottom of the pile.
It does, but also fights inflation. So a lot of U.S. economists were saying that with Trump, if he really does succeed in this big push to push out these illegal migrants, that we're going to see food prices increase, and that'll work against
when people are paid a living wage to do a job. I mean, That's the reality. But then there's also a huge cost to a lot of people who aren't living with, and there's a huge cost to criminality and the basic principle that you don't have a right to go and live in any sodding country you feel like it.
Yeah, that's true.
But a lot of people on your side, on the Democrat side, don't think that. They genuinely, like here in the UK, they genuinely think that, we should have open borders.
Yes, I know. Well, I spent 4 years in George Bush's administration too, in the White House.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty much a nonpartisan person.
Yeah.
I'm known as a public servant. But it's true. There is a belief that, and it's against U.S. law. I began my career as a visa officer. Let me put it this way. So my first year in Poland, where my relatives came from, and they came to the U.S. to work. And it was legal back then. For me, it was heartbreaking to have to say to all these visa applicants who wanted to do what my grandparents did and put me in the position to become a U.S. diplomat that they can't do it. But that's the law. That's the law that Congress passed, and it has to be enforced.
There you go. It's that simple. Matthew Bryce, the former White House official, saying the Obama and the George Bush administration. Sam Armstrong. It is extraordinary what's going on in America. We know we import an awful lot of their madness as well. But we had this in this country. We see it again and again. Two-tiered justice and the attitude of the authorities to violence and very extreme violence and destruction of property on the streets by people who have certain political views and even pretty peaceful protests, genuinely peaceful protests by people who have the wrong views, treated very differently by the authorities and by the police and subsequently in terms of the prosecution.
Yeah, you don't hear a pip out of the rule of law brigade when it comes to enforcing these laws. And my advice to the Democrats is this. Look, if you genuinely believe that the American people want to see years more mass migration, run for office, pass a bill, abolish migration laws, change America in that way. Tear down the walls, open up the doors, go back to the old days where if you turned up in New York on a boat, you could come into the country. If you want to do that, great. What I don't accept, whether it's here, there, wherever, is being too cowardly to make that issue a public one.
Yeah, if that's what you think, ask the public and we'll give you our answer.
Otherwise it is a subversion of our democracy, and I take that incredibly seriously because it's a quiet coup against the British people, the American people.
And it's not like, well, we never asked you. No. We've told you. At every election 2010 onwards, we've told you what we thought.
And you promised us you were dealing with it.
You were dealing with it. Yeah, exactly. But again, careful, we will be. I'm expecting to have the handcuffs somewhere. I'm going to be referred to prevent for virtually everything I've said today. And you lot too, watching and listening, they're coming after you too. You need to be re-educated and de-radicalised. But as I say, I think it's going to be quite good fun in the re-education camps. It's going to be all the best people. 12:53 is the time. We're going to take a break. Then we're going to hear from you on all the big stories we've been talking about. 0344 499 1000. Don't forget that breaking news in the last hour that 9 million pensioners will receive winter fuel payments this winter. If you're got income less than 35 grand a year, which is most pensioners, you will get your £300 annual winter fuel payment back. What do you turn? Only possible, of course, because the Labour Party has solved the problems with the economy. I know, I'm laughing too. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
These lawyers' costs are not included in this 4.7 billion, and the 4.7 billion figure, Mike, includes the hotel costs. It also includes the kind of the landlord accommodation that the likes of Serco will pay you 5 years, all your rent, all your kind of utilities and stuff. So it's a staggering amount of money. And as you point out there, so 600,000 people have to get up, go to work every single day, pay their taxes because they earn on average. In the UK, it's about £38,000 a year. So obviously you earn that money, the government takes the tax, and you need 600,000 of them to pay the asylum accommodation bill.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk Over Common Sense. 12:56 is the time. Just got a few minutes left. We're going to go straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Guess what, guys? It's Georgina. She's on the line in London. Hello, Georgina.
Good morning, my darling.
Afternoon. Georgina had a good one.
oh gosh.
What do you want? What do you want?
Good afternoon.
What do you want to talk about?
Right, I want to talk about this ridiculous drug that's supposed to make you, well, it does make you thin, but you've got to realise the people who have taken this miracle drug, and I say that very loosely, are in essence human guinea pigs, and we will only see the full extent of the harm it causes in the future, but the fact we are seeing problems so soon
with the fat jabs, I know, already.
You know, it should be very concerning to the medical profession and the people who've taken it, and they should stop prescribing it until proper testing.
Well, and certainly not prescribe it on your and my taxes. I mean, the NHS, it's been doubled, you know, in the last year. My main thing is it's just like, you know, it might work, might not work, but we know what does work, and that is free to all the rest of us and to the NHS, is just eating less.
Well, that's it. There's no miracle cure for obesity. The only safe way to lose weight is to stop sticking rubbish in your mouth and do regular exercise. The contraindications with these drugs far outweigh the benefits.
There you go.
Julia.
She solved it. See, Georgina's never been wrong. Sam Armstrong, I'm allowed to say it on air. You actually did use Zempic. One of them.
I confess.
Look at him. He's got no meat on him at all.
Well, look, here's
no blubber.
Here's the thing. I do believe different people find it easier and harder, especially if you're very busy, to eat less or not. I found it quite hard. Yeah, I paid for the drugs myself. I ordered them online. It was my body. I wanted to. You
didn't get pregnant when you were on them?
I didn't, just about.
Just about.
I wanted to lose weight. I didn't want to go through the whole hassle. It was £200 a month. I actually, to tell you the truth, it made me money because I spent more than £200 less in food.
Can I say, this is why it shouldn't be on the NHS, because people can afford it if they want to. Thank you for that. Very honest. I appreciate that. Let's go to Stuart in Wigan. Stuart, I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. You've got 30 seconds, my love.
Well, 2 quick ones. First of all, I mean, they should ban the burqa, plain and simple.
Yep.
If people want to wear that, there's places in the world that they can go and wear it. They don't have to stay here if they don't like it.
Yep.
The other thing is Greta Thunberg.